This boy was expelled from the group. His name was Crash Valheim, born into the strongest lineage, yet treated like a failure. He was despised because of his ability to steal curses. Even so, thanks to him, the group reached the top. In the end, Crash was betrayed by his companion, who stole the girl he loved, and even sacrificed innocent people. Now, everyone despises him. He was betrayed by Arthur, who planned to leave him behind and go back in time with the girls. Stabbed in the back, Crash could only watch as those he once helped laughed at his death. But when everything went dark, he woke up 20 years in the past, when he was still a child. Now, he has the chance to take revenge on the bastards who betrayed him. The story opens with someone calling the boy a failure, asking what he's doing. The masked figure then orders him to quickly steal Lord Arthur's curse. Saying he's at his limit, he announces he's going to steal the curse now. Revealing his name, Crash Valheim, he readies his hand to use his ability. He is then described as a failure born into the strongest bloodline. Suddenly, his eye widens amidst the falling snow. Using the Black Hood ability, the other man begins the extraction process on him. Turning his face, the long-haired man continues to use his strange ability. It's then revealed that his ability can steal the curses of others. Despite bleeding heavily, he becomes a hero who fights against destruction. Approaching Lord Arthur, some people offer a recovery potion. Lord Arthur then looks to the side after having the curse removed. From the skies, a skeletal knight on his horse charges through the destruction. The skeletal knight's face is then shown in a dramatic close-up. A huge meteor falls from the sky, striking the ice mountain directly. He questions if they should fight the knight with so few people. With a sword stuck in the ground, a voice says it's impossible to go on. Calling for Sigrun and the others, he asks them all to come to him. The girls then gather around Lord Arthur, looking very worried. From a distance, a panting Crash watches everything and calls out Arthur's name. Angrily, he asks what the hell that bastard is doing now. Lord Arthur firmly replies that he will end it all. Kneeling in the snow, he laments that the world's hope has been extinguished. In disbelief, he stares at Arthur and asks if he's really giving up. He yells, asking if Arthur knows how many people sacrificed themselves for him. Then he sarcastically asks if hanging around with women has made him completely crazy. Furious, Sigrun interrupts and yells for Crash to shut his mouth immediately. She defends Arthur, saying he did everything he could. Calling him trash, she tells him not to lecture Arthur. Extending his hand, he asks how they dare speak to their savior that way. Kneeling on the ground, he shouts that no one would have gotten this far without his ability. With a shout, he warns that he's going to refresh their memories. At that moment, Abella, the Red Witch, approaches and asks if Arthur is okay. Recalling the past, he says she couldn't use magic and begged for his help. He continues, stating that she attacked him while he suffered from the curse. He then concludes that her attitude of ignoring others hasn't changed. Next, he turns to Mary, the Empire's strongest spear. He calls her a fool, who always cried for him to steal her curses. Then he mentions the princess, who called him trash after his sacrifice. Looking at her, he asks if she understands what he went through to help. He recalls that her faction attacked him directly at the old academy. Showing the scene, he says they bullied him without any mercy. While humiliating him, they doubted he was even a member of the Valheim family. Despite it all, he reveals he endured it and healed her for one reason. Finally, he says he was just a useless failure who couldn't fight. He questions what the point was of cleaning up their messes for so long. To this, Arthur says that anyone could have failed, but he could have saved the world. Recalling the past, he says Arthur should have led all those fools. He remembers seeing Arthur on the front lines and deciding to stay by his side forever, so he asks why Arthur is giving up so easily right at the end. Arthur then replies that he can finally tell him the whole truth now. Revealing his plan, he says the world has ended and he will start over from scratch. Repeating the word, he asks what exactly starting over means. Arthur then reveals it's not the first time he's experienced the world's destruction. Pointing at him, Arthur reveals that his special ability is regression. He explains that this time, the girls can also regress and keep their memories. The idea is that they could all start over while retaining all their accumulated experience. This would greatly increase the probability of avoiding destruction in the next world. He then states that he will start from the beginning with only the 3 girls. Clutching his chest, he asks what will happen to him in all of this. A chain tightens, and Arthur grabs him by the neck with a smile. He then coldly informs him that Crash is no longer needed for the plan. Clutching his chest, he's completely paralyzed upon hearing the cruel revelation. Arthur then admits that his ability to steal curses is very powerful. He continues, explaining there's no point in going back in time with him so worn out. Spitting blood, he hears Arthur question the point of taking him back like this. It would be much more efficient, according to him, to get him again, clean and untouched. The revelation shows that the plan was always to use him and then throw him away. Arthur then tells him not to worry, as he will use him in the next worlds too. Saying his goodbyes, he declares they will meet again, leaving Crash behind. Watching them all leave, he screams in desperation, begging them to wait for him. Reaching out his hand, he tries to get to the group as they walk away without looking back. In a memory, Arthur just watched as he was ignored by the entire group. Falling from the cliff, he screams for that bastard to take him with them. His hand loses its strength as his consciousness begins to fade completely. Clenching his fist, he gathers his last bit of strength to fight back. He then decides he won't let things end this way. His ability, Black Hood, can also steal skills, not just curses. Believing it's worth a shot, he activates his power with everything he's got. Using Black Hood, he aims at Arthur, who suddenly opens his arms. With his arms open, Arthur seems to be in the middle of his own activation. Then a large, shadowy hand lunges towards his former companion. With a smile, he's a bit confused by the result of his attempt. The shadow then envelops Arthur, beginning the skill extraction process. Having successfully stolen the power, he feels the ability in his hand and calls out to Arthur. Weakened, Arthur asks if Crash still hasn't given up fighting him. Touching his hand, Crash says he's already been through countless destructions. He reveals that Arthur left him behind in all the other worlds. Saying that now Arthur is the one being left behind, he hears Arthur ask if he's gone mad. Smiling, he stares intently at Arthur, showing that the tables have finally turned. Pointing to the night, he replies that maybe he really has gone mad. He then reminds Arthur that the world would only face complete destruction. With his hand on his chest, Arthur is completely shocked by what's happening. His eye widens, unable to believe the scene he is witnessing. Looking down, he remains paralyzed, unable to show any reaction. Then, he tells Arthur to fight alone if he doesn't want to die right there. From the sky, a powerful beam of energy descends at high speed towards him. Declaring his intention, he announces that he will be the one to save the next world. The scene changes, and he appears lying down, his eyes tightly shut. His face sweating, he remains motionless in bed for another moment. Suddenly opening his eye, he seems to finally awaken from a deep sleep. Reaching out his hand, he screams in fear upon waking up in a completely different place. Looking around, he tries to understand where he is and what happened. Seeing a large window, he begins to recognize the room he's in. Sitting on the bed, he realizes he's in the house where he lived as a child. With the regression complete, he notes that he is not as young as he appears. The narration explains the world erosion, a phenomenon where one world is consumed by another. When the erosion occurs, the environment changes, and a creature attacks one of the warriors. As a result, species from other worlds invade, bringing destruction wherever they go. Among them, creatures that resemble humans are a special kind of threat. Called world invaders, one of them attacks the village, making everyone run. Fighting against the erosion, a group of warriors prepares to face the threat. Preparing his staff, one of the members gets into position to launch a major attack. Known as the Azure Generation, the battle begins with everyone advancing together against the enemy, and there among them, he watched the situation with a very serious and distant expression. With a body that only sealed curses, he ended up joining the Azure Generation. Used as a vessel, he was betrayed and lived a miserable life. Back in his room, he looks up with a very surprised expression on his face. Waking up startled, he sits up in bed, trying to understand his surroundings. He then looks around and wonders if this is really his room. Touching his face, he realizes it's now summer, unlike the winter from before. Concluding he's in his childhood hall, he remains seated on the bed. Remembering the fight, he used Black Hood on Arthur as a last resort. He then realizes he successfully stole the regression ability. With a hand on his head, he lets out a slightly awkward laugh. Sitting on the floor, he wonders how he managed to steal the skill. The explanation reveals that people think Black Hood has no usage restrictions, but the truth is, his ability has a very obvious flaw. To work, it needs to unlock a lock that the target skill generates when activated. This lock is created based on the value the owner places on the target. If the owner considers it precious, the difficulty of stealing it increases significantly. That's why things the opponent values are much harder to steal. He thinks that the greater the value, the harder the theft should be. Remembering Arthur, he's confused about what happened at the end of the fight. At that moment, he saw Black Hood activate, but he couldn't see any lock. Then it hits him. Arthur wanted to abandon his own regression ability. That Arthur, the hero king, wanted to discard his powerful regression ability. Remembering the past, he starts thinking about how Arthur sometimes acted. His former leader always wore an exhausted expression, as if fulfilling an obligation. Repeating the destruction alone, it would have been impossible for him to remain completely sane. So he understands that for Arthur, Regression was the same as a curse. That's why he made the 3 girls inherit the memories and tried to regress with them. Then he realizes the plan was simply to leave him out of everything. But the fact that he stole the skill with Black Hood changes everything completely. This means that the Arthur of that world was left behind without regression. Hit by the meteor, he couldn't escape the destruction of the Blue Knight. Turning around, he says Arthur should thank him for stealing the skill he hated. Giving a slight laugh, he seems to understand the great irony of the whole situation. He then remembers how the group always left him behind alone. They all acted as if receiving curses was something anyone could do easily. Without ever caring, they just ignored all the suffering he was going through. With a smile, he says that bastard deserved what happened to him. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, he notices his body is now very small. He then sees that he's around 10 years old, with a short and muscular body. Being the result of training every day, he was trying to survive in the Valheim family. Being there, he understands he's right after the 10-year-old's ordeal ceremony. The Valheim family ceremony tested the skills and contract of each member. In it, the better the contractor, the higher the lord's status became in the family. Born without talent, none of the lords ended up choosing him during the ceremony. After that, he was kicked out of the main house with nowhere to go. He was then sent to Blue Pine Hall where the failures stayed. Looking out the window, he recognizes himself as the biggest failure of the Valheim family. Despite everything, he's the only one who knows about the end of the world, an end that not even the powerful Azure generation was able to prevent. Pondering, he wonders if he could stop the coming destruction. He then questions if he would be able to prevent the destruction of the entire world. Placing his hand on the glass, he watches the blue sky outside. Clenching his fist tightly, he tells himself not to be a coward. He then realizes it's not a question of whether he can stop the end or not. Remembering the battles, he understands he must stop the destruction no matter what. After all, if the world is destroyed, he will die along with it. With a determined smile, he concludes there is no other choice to be made. Taking a step, he thinks the first stage to avoid everything starts now. At that moment, an older man appears at the door, calling him young master. Surprised to see him, he asks what Ariad is doing in that place. Being the butler who took care of him, he hugs him with a big smile. In a memory, a voice asks when Ariad plans to use the poison he received. Then he discovers his brother gave Ariad the poison to kill him. Ariad was the first person who poisoned him and taught him what betrayal was. Elsewhere, a girl charges forward, taking down several opponents with a single strike. She then defeats another guard, who collapses to the ground as everyone watches. Shocked, the men comment that the knights can't even lay a finger on her. This is Charlotte Valheim, Crash's half-sister, and she finds the situation quite boring. One of them remarks that he's heard she's a prodigy, born once in a millennium. Just then, her half-brother Verokin overhears that she will prevent the extinction of the Valheim family. With a furious glare, he says he will end that entire bloodline. But his advisors warn that attacking Charlotte is too risky right now. With a malicious smile, he decides he'll start by killing his brother first. Changing scenes, he calls the butler Ariad for a private conversation in the room. He then claims that Crash is blocking Ariad's path to advancement. Offering a vial, he says the poison will solve all the butler's problems. Ariad hesitates, explaining that he raised the young master as if he were his own son. Sitting in his chair, Verokin just stares at him and calls his name coldly. He then asks if Ariad will choose someone else's son over his own daughter. With his head bowed, the butler firmly replies that he cannot do that. Blood then splatters onto the plate of food, staining everything on the hall floor. His hand then trembles in the air as he seems to lose all his strength. Remembering the scene, he holds Ariad in his arms and calls his name in desperation. As he holds him, Ariad apologizes to the young master before finally passing away. With blood-stained hands, he hears Ariad say that he considered him a son. Letting his hand fall, he wonders what he has done now. Unable to bear the guilt, Ariad took the poison and left this world behind. The memory shows the voice asking when he will use the poison he received. He recalls the revelation that his brother gave the poison to the butler. Returning to the present, he confronts Ariad about the plan to sacrifice him for his daughter. When asked if he knew, the butler just remains silent with his head bowed. Seeing his reaction, he says it's useless if the butler is going to feign ignorance. He then turns and says the order would never have existed if he weren't such a failure. The butler just watches, surprised by the young master's unexpected reaction. Turning back to the butler, he shows a very different and determined expression. Extending his hand, he asks the butler to just follow him now. They then arrive at the Grand Library, a place filled with books and shelves. Ariad then asks why they suddenly went to the study. Pointing a finger, he orders the butler to cut that wall immediately. He then says that a Valheim butler would find the task quite easy. Stepping forward, Ariad prepares to carry out the strange order. Wielding his sword, he positions himself to make a single, precise cut. He holds the sword with both hands, focusing his energy into the strike. With a single motion, the sword slices through the wall with great ease. Opening a hole, the secret passage is revealed, and he praises the cut. Surprised by the passage, Ariad hears him congratulate him on a job well done. At that moment, the butler realizes the young master is completely different from yesterday. He then notices the passage is illuminated with moonlight pearls. Seeing the locked door, he approaches to examine the large lock. Looking at the door, he comments that the place brings back many memories. Back then, everything had already been completely burned down and was in ruins, but this time, he managed to get there before everything was destroyed. Ariad then asks if he should cut the chains locking the door. He replies no, as the chains cannot be cut by normal means. Preparing to test his abilities, he activates the Black Hood skill once more. The shadows from the skill creep forward and begin to envelop the entire lock on the door. Then, the chains shatter and the lock falls to the floor, startling Ariad. Ariad asks in shock if he has made a contract with one of the lords. He then remembers that at that point he hadn't yet made the contract. He then replies that he made a contract with some insignificant lord. The butler just watches, left completely speechless by the drastic change. Ariad remembers that just yesterday the young master seemed to have lost his will to live. He concludes that the boy changed overnight after making the contract. Seeing his potential, he believes the young master could become a great warrior. Ariad swallows hard, looking very tense about the whole situation. He then calls out to the young master, still recovering from the huge shock. Making a promise, he vows that he will not tell anyone about the secret. At that moment, the boy realizes the great flaw of the regression ability. By acting differently than in the past, he notices that Ariad is also changing now, but the memory of the Ariad who betrayed him remains vivid in his mind. He then thinks that by healing his daughter, he can earn his complete loyalty. Holding a piece, he decides he needs to increase his number of pawns while he's here. He says he'll think about the daughter later, telling Ariad to do as he pleases. With the secret library as the priority, he approaches the wooden door. Suddenly, the door's lock begins to react in an unexpected way. His eyes widen, surprised by what is happening right in front of him. A powerful energy explodes from the door, throwing them both back forcefully. Hit by the blast wave, he is shocked by the force of that energy. Feeling the pressure, he concludes that his grimoire is inside. Looking up, they see a shelf glowing intensely inside the secret library. Finding the book, he realizes he's in the secret library of Blue Pine Hall. It was a special place where the failed ancestors recorded their techniques and memories. They preserved the grimoires through their achievements, not because of skills. At first, anyone could enter, but because of one person, it became a secret library, and that person was none other than Damaris Valheim, a figure from the past. Being the worst failure in history, he forever marked the family's name. After being consumed by the erosion, he ended up becoming the strongest of all. Just then, he realizes that this is the grimoire left behind by the worst of the failures. Reaching out his hand, he apologizes to his ancestors for taking so long to arrive. Known as Damaris Valheim, he emerges as a figure of absolute power. Called the greatest failure, he was also the strongest in history. Because of his fame, the world's strongest warriors challenged him. Effortlessly, he catches and neutralizes an enemy's attack. Then he unleashes his strength, sending all his opponents flying. Faced with his power, no one could even stand before him. That was his devastating technique, known as extreme blood immersion, all because he possessed a method to absorb the world's erosion. Years later, a young Crash said he didn't understand how Damaris lost control. Recalling the past, he reveals that he too was targeted by terrible curses. Then, he realizes he can use one curse to nullify another. His plan was to steal a curse that could control the first one's fury. Thus, the two curses begin to clash inside his body. As a result, the conflict between them generates a new energy. Seeing the outcome, he realizes he can also become much stronger. Calling for Ariad, young Crash gets the attention of his butler. Giving an order, he forbids anyone from entering the Blue Pine Hall. Accepting the command, Ariad walks down the hall with his sword in hand. Determined, he states that he will refuse Verokin's proposal to honor Crash. Furious with the refusal, Verokin screams, demanding to know the reason for the decision. Still shouting, he says they can't keep someone like Crash in the family. In a flashback, he blames Crash's mother's interference in the past. He laments that he and his sister could have kept their positions. With a contorted face, he grinds his teeth with great force. Back in the present, he yells for a servant who appears in the hallway. Verokin then orders the servant to go to the hall and find out the reason for the refusal. But the servant informs him they cannot enter, leaving Burkeman confused. He then explains that Ariad has sealed the gate and barred everyone from entering. In disbelief, Burkeman questions if not even the head of the family can enter. Calling Crash a failure, he rages while the boy continues to meditate alone. Finishing his meditation, he forcefully expels the air from his lungs. Clenching his fist, he wonders if he has already reached the specialist level. The various realms of aura mastery are then introduced. The specialist level is the line that separates common people from geniuses. He remembers that his half-sister Charlotte is already almost a master. Even that unprecedented monster Charlotte was unable to prevent the end. In his past life, she was completely powerless against the world's destruction. Compared to her, he is still just at the entry level of a specialist. Therefore, he questions if he can truly protect the world at this pace. His older version appears, saying he'll only know if he tries. He then tells him there's no need to lament his weakness. Continuing, he says that everything is different now from his past life, because now he can grow with the grimoire left by the family's failures. With a smile, his two versions face each other with the same determination. Full of confidence, he declares that he can become much stronger. Arriving to greet him, Ariad congratulates the young master on entering the specialist realm. Taking the towel, he asks them not to make a fuss over something like that. As he dries himself, he asks why the butler was waiting for him there. Ariad then informs him that his fiancée, Lady Bianca, has arrived at the Blue Pine Hall. Hearing the news, he freezes completely, not knowing what to do. Then, he remembers her as Bianca, the fearsome white demon of the future. In his past life, she became a servant to the world's invaders, but he remembers that for now, she is just the youngest daughter. Seeing the girl at the gate, he understands that this is a political marriage. This way, her family gains connections while getting rid of a failure. With a smile, he says they are both being used by their families. He then comments that he already had business with her, finding the visit convenient. The story reveals that Bianca's mother was afflicted by a curse. Because of this, Bianca was also born with a curse in her body. Called the Snow Doll, the curse left her completely emotionless. Being a curse that affected the soul, not even specialists could remove it. Born in her mother's place, Bianca was treated coldly her entire life. The entire Hardened Hearts family saw her only as a cursed and useless girl. Remembering this, Crash wonders if she hated him in his past life. With a smile, he says he hopes he won't have any trouble stealing the curse. Explaining his plan, he reveals that her curse is what he needs. Asking for clothes, Ariad promptly offers to prepare them, and he accepts immediately. After getting dressed, he orders them to bring the girl inside the mansion. 5 months ago, he contemptuously dismisses the girl. Shouting, he accuses her of only wanting the Valheim family's power. Faced with the accusations, she remains standing in silence, showing no reaction. Soon after, the room's door closes, leaving the girl alone. In her thoughts, she admits she didn't want to be there either. Remembering the past, her father used to say they needed the alliance to survive. With destiny in her hands, Bianca just clenched her fist tightly. Her father kept saying that the family's future depended entirely on her. Back then, he was just a pessimistic, sharp-tongued loser. Hand to her face, she recalled that unpleasant meeting. She reveals that if she could have, she would have been the first to refuse the deal. Back in the present, he reacts with a surprised exclamation. With a smile, he apologizes for the hot tea, knowing she doesn't like it. Without a word, she just stares at the tea and cake on the table. Changing the subject, he invites her for a walk in the mansion's garden. Calling for Ariad, he asks them to prepare some macadamia cookies in the garden. Walking beside her, he says it's nice to spend some time together. Smiling, he jokes that she doesn't look like a bride, but a commander. Hearing his comment, she stares at him in silence for a few moments. Just then, she realizes he even knows her favorite cookies. Arriving in the garden, he comments on the piece, but she cuts him off. Looking directly at him, she asks if he is really the true Crash. After her question, the two stare intently at each other for a brief moment. He then gets closer and touches her hair, surprising the girl. Asking if he seems so different, he releases a bit of his power. Immediately, she is startled, feeling the murderous intent coming from him. Quickly, she bows and apologizes, thinking she offended him with her question. Remembering that day, he says his memories from that time are quite vague, but he claims there's one thing he never forgot. It was the same expression she had on the day of her death. Deciding to lie, he explains that he recently managed to form a contract with a god. Surprised by the news, she congratulates him and says she understands the change. He then says he has a proposal, leaving the girl a bit confused. Worried, She asks if he's trying to break off their engagement. Awkwardly, he says he would understand if she wanted to call off the engagement. With a serious expression, she stares at him without saying a single word. Declaring she is his fiancée, she states with conviction that this won't change. Surprised, he is speechless at the words he never expected to hear. Composing himself, he says he needs to get back to the main point of their conversation. Extending his hand, he reveals that he actually wants her curse. Not understanding, she questions why he wants a curse that no one can break. Confirming he needs the curse, he offers her a wish in return. Thinking about the situation, she assumes he wants to erase his emotions because of his family. In her mind, the family strain drove him to this extreme desire. She then questions if this is some kind of mental illness. Remembering old advice, she recalls that minds on the edge can break. After that, the person might act strangely, as if their personality has changed. That wise man warned her that if someone close reached this dangerous point, the only right thing to do would be to simply stay by that person's side. Holding his hand, she says he can overcome this without any curse. Completely confused by her reaction, he tries to explain that there has been a huge misunderstanding. Ignoring him, she says she will visit him often, maybe even move nearby. Admitting she doesn't like him, she states she can't abandon someone on the verge of a breakdown. At this, he realizes she is completely misunderstanding the situation. Seeing this won't work, he decides he will test his ability secretly. Activating his power, he prepares to use the Black Hood ability on her. But instead of stealing it, the ability begins to generate a new condition. Suddenly, the power turns against him, causing an unexpected reaction. Then the unlock condition appears. He needs to become friends with Bianca. Realizing it's a double lock, he understands the curse is a vital part of her. Therefore, his condition is to befriend a girl with no emotions. Sending her back home would only accelerate her transformation into the terrible white demon. Deciding to cooperate, he says he's happy to see her more often. At this, she says she will confirm with her father and will be back soon. Watching her leave, he decides to use the time to read as many grimoires as possible. The next day, a large carriage arrives, unloading several boxes at the gate. Curious about the arrival, he approaches to see what's happening. But suddenly, a familiar voice from the carriage calls his name. It was Bianca, who announces she'll be living there in the hall from now on. Completely shocked, he shouts, asking why they have to live together there. Slowly opening his eyes, he's met with a rather unexpected scene. Beside him in bed, Bianca was still sleeping very soundly. Seeing she had slept there again, he wonders what he should do. Yawning, he says that someone might get the wrong idea about the situation. Waking up confused, she asks what he's doing there, and he asks her the same question. After some time, he continued his days of intense training at the mansion. He then realizes that a few months have already passed since she arrived. The scene flashes back to the day she announced she would be living there. Asking them to take good care of her, she left the boy completely speechless. When he asked how she managed to move in, Bianca replied it wasn't a problem at all. Worried, he asks if she'll be okay being so far from her family at such a young age. He then assumes her lack of emotions prevents her from feeling homesick. Despite everything, he sees this as an advantage in becoming her friend. As time goes on, he realizes the year is almost over. Thus, the opening of the long-awaited Lahelny Academy is drawing ever closer. In his past life, that academy trained countless members of the Blue Generation. Many of them ended up with ridiculously overpowered abilities back then. Remembering those students, he grinds his teeth with great force and anger. Because he knows their weaknesses, he plans to steal everyone's abilities at the academy. With a year to prepare, he knows he needs to get much stronger. Unfortunately, his natural talent seemed to be reaching its limit. With the grimoires, he can only reach the initial stage of an expert. To overcome this barrier, he needs to steal the curse and use immersion. Arriving in the room, he asks if Bianca was waiting for him again. She confirms, saying she can't leave him alone for too long. Ever since, she's been following him everywhere like a little bird. He then wonders how long it will take for her to see him as a friend. As he's about to ask her out, Ariad appears and calls for the young master. Ariad then informs him that an invitation from the Star Sanctuary has just arrived. It was a formal event for the young nobles of the kingdom to meet. Thanking the butler, he takes the invitation and confirms he remembers the event. In his past life, he isolated himself, so his memories are vague. His expression turns serious as he considers the decision to go to the sanctuary. Remembering a promise, he decides to go to prevent the tragedy from repeating itself. Confirming he'll attend, Bianca announces she'll go with him to the event. She then warns him, saying that people will likely criticize him a lot. Suggesting it would be better, he tells her not to go to avoid trouble, but Bianca refuses the suggestion, insisting she will go with him anyway. She then states that protecting her partner is the duty of a true fiancé. Patting her on the head, he says he just wanted her honest opinion. At that, she looks at him with the same supportive gaze she has always shown. The scene shows moments from the past few months where he was kind to her. Remembering his treatment, She comments that no one has ever treated her that way. Because of his kindness, she almost forgot the terrible first meeting they had. So she decides to go with him. Not as his fiancé, but simply as herself. Hearing her declaration, he is left completely surprised and speechless. With a faint smile on her face, she just confirms that's how she feels. Arriving at the location, they come across the Grand Star Dragon Pavilion. Once inside, he is impressed by the wealth while Bianca feels ill. It's explained that nobles are respected for fighting against the world's erosion, but instead of training, many of them just enjoy themselves at luxurious parties. Stepping onto the carpet, the two walk toward the entrance of the hall. Once in the main hall, he wonders how many decent nobles are actually there. As they are announced, the guests comment on the arrival of the failure and the cursed one. At that, a woman warns others not to stare too long, or they'll be cursed too. Ignoring the comments, he observes everyone, surrounded by fake nobles on all sides. Suddenly, a noble figure hears the name Valheim and shows great interest. He then realizes there are also some true nobles in the Grand Hall. Among them was Balak Hogma, a future member of the powerful Blue generation. Beside him was the imposing Kasagi Elfin Amelia, also from that generation. Completing the trio was the forest archer, Annex Greiser. Seeing the interest from the three of them, he finds their attention a bit strange. He soon remembers that the real reason was his half-sister Charlotte. Remembering the past, she used to boast that no one could even beat her in a duel. Calling the sanctuary a dump, she would show off her superiority to everyone there. After the event, she would just say that the whole thing had been very boring. Returning to the present, he realizes she must have caused trouble here before. Noticing his distraction, Bianca lightly tugs on his clothes to get his attention. She tells him to ignore them, and he says he was just thinking about Charlotte. Stroking her head, he says he doesn't mind at all. Changing focus, he wonders when the person he's waiting for will appear. Suddenly, all the guests look toward the entrance of the Grand Hall. Then the herald announces the arrival of the long-awaited Lord Darling Danforlion. Arriving extravagantly, the eccentric noble greets everyone in the hall. Back in the past, Darling finds him covered in curses and wonders what happened. Analyzing the situation, he begins to gesture with his hands in preparation. Touching his face, Darling says he can combine the curses to heal him. He then invites him to be his test subject, promising a complete cure. Seeing the lack of response, he asks if the boy doesn't even have the strength to speak. Without waiting for permission, Darling announces he'll just start the procedure right now. Startled, he widens his eyes as he sees the energy forming in front of him. Trying to stop him, he shoves him away with a desperate scream. He then calls him a maniac, revealing this was his first encounter with Darling Danforlion. Back in the present, Darling's arrival causes a stir among the guests. Knowing what he's like, Crash says he would never miss an event like this. Asking Bianca to wait, he and some other boys grab food from the table. With her mouth full, she agrees to wait for him there. Across the hall, Darling watches him, finding his face familiar. Coming closer, the boy formally introduces himself as Crash Valheim. Hearing the name, Darling realizes he really does look like Charlotte. With sparkling eyes, he asks if the boy is her younger brother. Getting straight to the point, Crash asks what he wants, but Darling just toys with the situation. Then he reveals he knows Darling has been investigating the world invaders. With a smile, he asks if that topic happens to catch his attention. Seeing his audacity, Darling calls him a rather bold boy for his attitude. He then warns him to prepare for the consequences and closes the room's door. Now, alone in the room, he wants to know Crash's current age. Before hearing the answer, he picks up a small vial, examining it carefully. Crash answers that he's 13, while Darling now holds 2 large swords. With no time to waste, he says he has the mind of a grown adult. With a smile, Darling encourages him to continue and say what he wants. Suddenly, Darling throws one of his swords toward the boy, his body frozen. He just watches the blade coming toward him. He then manages to defend himself from the surprise attack that followed. Annoyed by the attack, he yells, wanting to know what Darling is doing. With a smirk, Darling explains he just wanted to test his skills first. Finding this whole thing a drag, he just glares at the noble with irritation. Keeping up the fight, Darling says he'll listen and tells him to talk. Going on the offensive, he lunges with a quick strike against the noble. Blocking the blow, Darling asks if he wasn't a talentless failure. Crossing swords, he replies that he trains every single day without stopping. Then he reveals he can help with his research on neutralizing curses. Surprised, Darling asks what he knows about alchemy to be able to help. With a focused gaze, he continues to defend against the alchemist's attacks. Taking a quick step, he prepares to turn the tables in the fight. Caught by surprise, Darling is left speechless by the unexpected counterattack. Disarming him, he reveals he knows about the work on the erosion curses. He then explains that the theory is to use other curses to nullify them. Stopping the fight, Darling now listens intently. holding his sword firmly. Offering his help, he says he will collaborate on that important research. He then reveals he'll do it using his ability to steal any curse. Completely shocked, Darling can't believe he can use aura that way. Thinking about the proposal, he begins to understand the possibilities of this collaboration. With a smile, he says, "This is perfect," and asks for the price. Rejecting the idea, he explains he needs a potion to suppress curses. He then adds that just stealing others' abilities won't be enough. After all, not even the blue generation could stop the apocalypse in the past. Being a failure, he states that he needs to try every possible method. Darling comments that he seems to have regained the motivation he lost to Charlotte. Thus, the overwhelming genius and the stubborn misfit are shown side by side. Seeing the two siblings, Darling blushes completely, at a loss for words. Regaining his composure, he says he has one more question for the boy. He then asks if Crash intends to enroll in the new Lahelny Academy. Confirming with a smile, he says, of course he'll enroll. Accepting the proposal, Darling offers his potions, saying he'll help with everything. Then, Crash says he has another favor to ask him. Asking about the discoloration disease, he wants to know if Darling is familiar with it. He then asks the alchemist to create a cure for that incurable disease. Darling says even he can't do it, but Crash claims he succeeded in the future. Lowering his gaze, he maintains his serious and determined expression on the matter. Clenching his fist, he shows all his conviction in what he just said. Then he states with absolute certainty that Darling can do it without a problem. His pride wounded, Darling cracks a smile, accepting the proposed challenge. Sealing the deal, the two bump fists in a gesture of trust. Already at the door, he says something has been bothering him a lot. He then asks if Darling likes his sister, receiving an overly enthusiastic response. Confused, Crash asks about him talking about boyfriends and empty places. Darling explains that he also likes men, as he's interested in both. Hearing this revelation, he's completely shocked, not knowing how to react. In shock, the noble shouts, questioning if he really heard the word by force. Crash then accuses him, saying he was about to lay a hand on a 12-year-old girl. He continues the accusation, and the noble panics, screaming it's not like that at all. Desperate, he yells that he was just following Lady Claudia's orders. Surprised, Crash wonders if he means Claudia from the Kingdom of Starin. He explains that the order was to take Lady Bianca, and he had to use force. At that moment, his gaze turns to the young Lady Bianca. As the youngest daughter of the Hardenhearts family, Bianca is despised for her curse. He wonders why that princess would have specifically summoned young Bianca. Thoughtfully, he concludes that something about this whole story doesn't add up. He then realizes there must be some other connection behind it all, a connection linking a noble directly to the second princess. Then, the image of a specific noble with a smirk comes to his mind. Clenching his fist, he remembers the archer, Annex, who pursued Charlotte. He recalls that after being humiliated, the young man became completely obsessed. Remembering the past, he knows Annex targeted him because he couldn't defeat Charlotte. With a contemptuous sigh, he finally understands the whole setup. Irritated, he realizes that Annex is now trying to drag Bianca into this mess. He then announces that he'll go, leaving the noble utterly confused by his answer. Clarifying the situation, he says he's not going to see the princess, but Annex. Holding her hand, he criticizes the fallen noble's lack of instinct. Asking Bianca to go with him, the girl agrees, accepting his invitation. Together, the two start to walk away down the hall, leaving the noble behind. As they walk, he asks Bianca why she refused to go before. She begins to answer, remembering a vision she had of a wedding. She says she thought he would abandon her, but he didn't. He then asks why she disobeyed the order, ignoring a royal summons. Simply, she says it was because he asked her to wait for him. Surprised by her answer, a slight smile forms on young Crash's face. Patting her on the head, he tells her she did very well. Arriving at the door, they find Balak, who is stretching energetically. With a grin, he seems to recognize the newcomer's arrival. Balak then greets him, and Crash replies that he came looking for Annex directly. He explains that Annex had already given orders to let the boy through. Seeing the situation, Crash remembers that this was Balak Hogma, the young tiger. He recalls that Balak is a talented swordsman and completely unpredictable in combat. Heading toward the door, he realizes Annex sent him as a test. Suddenly, Balak challenges him, saying he was curious and wanted to fight. He argues that if Crash has already fought Charlotte, fighting him should be no problem. Even among the strongest, Balak was known for his sharp intuition. That's why Crash preferred to avoid a confrontation before finally finding Annex. Looking into his eyes, Crash realizes the young man won't give up so easily. With no other choice, he accepts the challenge and clenches his fist, preparing himself. Just then, Balak lunges forward, launching the first attack against young Crash. Dodging the blow, he leaps over his opponent with a precise acrobatic move. Planting his hands on the floor, he quickly spins his body to launch his counterattack. Then he comes down with a powerful strike, hitting Balak directly in the chest. With a concentrated expression, he puts all his strength into the single punch. The impact sends his opponent flying violently backward across the hall. Balak falls to the floor, knocked out by his opponent's swift and devastating attack. After the strike, he observes the fallen body, a little surprised by the result. Getting up, Balak says that Crash really doesn't hold back in his fights. Rubbing his neck, he replies that Balak himself was the one who challenged him. Excited, Balak asks for another round and questions if he can use his weapon this time. He then asks, more seriously, if his opponent can even stand. With a smile, Balak gets ready, but blood starts to trickle from his nose. Confused, he notices the injury a second before losing consciousness. Unable to stay on his feet, he falls backward, finally defeated. At that, Bianca asks what he did, and he answers that it's a secret technique. The technique is described as a short-range strike, passed down from his ancestors. He remembers saving this secret technique before everything burned down. Explaining to Bianca, he says this move has saved him countless times. Looking at the fallen Balak, he warns that the guy won't be getting up anytime soon. Just then, the hall door opens, revealing what awaited them inside. On the balcony, Annex and Kasagi turn around upon hearing the noise from the entrance. Annex then asks, surprised, what could have happened to the guard, Balak? With a sideways glance, Annex admits he's surprised that Crash defeated Balak. Crash retorts, asking if that wasn't the plan all along. Pointing at his rival, he says he came to settle things with him personally. Annex asks how he figured it all out, and Crash ironically confirms the rumors of him being a failure. Approaching him, he warns that after he defeats him, this story will be different. With a smile, he says that after this fight, the rumors about him will change. He says if the rumor is true, fine, but that changes today. With a smile, Annex just stares at him in silence, not rising to the challenge. Crash then remembers his former colleague, a nobleman named Annex Greiser. In a flashback, he recalls the time they spent together at the academy and in the Azure generation. After all this time, he realized Annex only kept him around because he was useful. His purpose was to be bait, thrown in front of dangerous monsters. In the chaos, he grows desperate, seeing that everyone else has fallen. Clinging to the edge, he begs for Annex's help, who just watches him from above. Annex explains that his reputation would be tarnished if it were discovered that he led them into a trap. He concludes that if he is the only survivor, no one will ever know the whole truth. Shouting, he warns that he won't let that happen and that Annex will be expelled. With a cold smile, Annex says not to worry, because the blame will fall on him. He continues, saying that since everyone already hates him, the matter would soon be forgotten. With a sarcastic thank you, he bids his friend farewell, leaving him to his fate. Furious, he yells, asking if Annex ever considered him a real friend. He yells that Annex only got close to him to get near Charlotte. Coldly, Annex replies that's exactly why he can't stand him. Continuing the insults, he accuses him of having no skill and only twisting words. Saying it all ends when Charlotte gets married, Annex simply turns his back. Looking back, he comments that maybe it's better for things to end this way. While Annex wishes for a beautiful ceremony, the young man starts to lose his strength. Unable to hold on, his hand finally slips from the cliff's edge. Seeing his imminent fall, he wonders if this is really his end. Suddenly, Arthur appears and catches him, asking if he's okay. Returning to the present, he reflects that this was the beginning of his next misfortune. He remembers that Annex was expelled and then desperately tried to get married. Tauntingly, Annex says he even talks and looks like his sister, Charlotte. Annoyed, he realizes that, in the end, some things never change. Warning him not to use her name, he asks if he thinks they look alike. Preparing for the confrontation, he moves into an attack stance against his rival. Moving forward, he says they may be similar, but he'll show him the difference. With a confident smile, Annex just faces the challenge from his former colleague. Leaping to attack, he is intercepted in midair by a tree branch. Placing his hand on the branch, he uses the obstacle to gain new momentum. He then launches himself from the branch, spinning his body for a direct aerial attack. His fist lands squarely on Annex's face, snapping his head back. Even as he's hit, he manages to use his power to counter the blow. Thrown into the air, he is forced to retreat from the unexpected counterattack. Several branches then shoot out of the ground, trying to hit him while he's in the air. Landing safely, he positions himself in front of Bianca to protect her. Looking at his rival, he comments that Annex is as troublesome as ever. Annex then taunts him, saying he should use a weapon to fight. His secret technique is based on strengthening and controlling plants with his energy. Questioning if he should use a weapon, he breaks off one of the branches from the ground. With a smile, He announces he will fight using his opponent's own plants. With a smirk, Annex asks if he really thinks he can do that. Challenging him, he sends several branches to attack, telling Crash to try and block them. Dodging with agility, the young man evades all the branches with no difficulty. In shock, Annex wonders how he managed to dodge an attack like that. He then says that Charlotte might have been able to, but Crash is just a failure. With a smile, Crash announces that Annex is simply his natural enemy in this fight. He explains that he's seen his abilities before, so he knows every move. Taunting his rival, he asks if Annex is still thinking about young Charlotte. Irritated, he asks if the boy is sure he wants to push his luck. Annex then releases a wave of power, striking the ground with his branches. Jumping back, he manages to escape and create a safe distance from the attack. Using his technique, he summons an enormous wooden titan from the ground. With a smile, he announces the name of his technique, the powerful wooden titan. Seeing the scene, Kasagi screams desperately, begging Lord Annex to stop immediately. She knows that if that attack hits Crash, the situation will be irreversible. Seeing the enormous fist descend, Kasagi screams in desperation, saying Annex is going to kill him. Facing the attack, he simply closes his eyes, maintaining a calm and focused posture. Remembering the past, he recalls a grimoire in Blue Pine's secret library. Written by an ancestor, the book belonged to a man who trained relentlessly. The grimoire then described the perfect union between a swordsman and his own blade. Having been pushed to the limit by his curses, he is able to understand that secret. Saying that he and the sword are one, the branch in his hand glows. With a single strike, the wooden titan is completely split in two. Holding the blade of pure energy, he stares at the result of his powerful attack. A massive slash cuts through the titan and destroys part of the balcony right behind it. Seeing the destruction, Annex and Kasagi look at the scene, completely paralyzed. Amidst the dust, he turns and gets his rival's attention. Letting the branch fall, he warns Annex never to be arrogant with him again. With his defeat, Annex falls to his knees, completely drained of strength. Seeing the titan crumble, Crash pants heavily, feeling the exhaustion from his final blow. He then realizes he's used all his strength, barely able to move now. His legs tremble, making it hard to walk as he nearly loses his balance. Bianca supports him just as Darling runs over, offering to help carry him. Suddenly, he reacts in pain and starts coughing, startling everyone there. Darling warns that he'll die at this rate and asks Bianca to hand him over. Pleading for her trust, he finally manages to take the young man into his arms. As he carries him, the nobles comment in shock about Annex's defeat. Turning his head, Darling notices that rumors about the fight are already spreading. He concludes that whether it was bold or reckless, Crash will be famous when he finally wakes up. Still, something about what happened at the party that night bothers him. He remembers Annex's expression and feels his rival is planning something else. Carrying him, he tells the boy not to die before helping with his research. In a flashback, a young Crash is seen training, blocking wooden logs. A week after the sanctuary, he trains and says he's finally recovered from the blow. Reflecting on the fight, he says he would have ended up worse than Annex if he'd kept going. If he had been awake, he regrets he could have prepared to steal the skill. He then reveals he had two ideas in mind for stealing skills. His plan was to make his opponent doubt their own technique by completely crushing them. By destroying the target's confidence, executing the theft becomes much easier. When his strike brought down the Titan, doubts certainly began to creep into Annex's mind. Defeated by someone he despised, Annex would begin to question the value of his technique. In time, he guarantees that Annex's recovery skill will be his. That's why he decides to train every day to surpass the geniuses before the academy. Suddenly, the butler Ariad appears at the door and calls his name. Ariad announces that Lord Verokin has arrived, making him realize patience has run out. Even though he's refused twice, he tells the butler to let his brother Verokin in. After training, Bianca approaches and offers him some water. She then comments that he smells like sweat, and he simply asks about it. Sniffing his own shirt, he wonders if the smell comes from using his aura. With that, he decides he doesn't need to clean up before meeting his brother. Bianca then asks him to please keep a certain distance from her. Surprised, he asks if she's giving orders to her own fiancé. Joking about the situation, he says that young Bianca has become much bolder. She then runs off, and he chases after her, shouting that she won't get away. Watching her run, he realizes her stubbornness is also her greatest strength. Shifting to the past, he remembers the people he knew before all this. In his memory, Arthur appears and coldly calls his name. Questioning his attitude, Arthur asks if he thinks he can stop the world's destruction. The memory of Arthur makes him recall the entire journey they had together. Admitting the truth, he knows that Arthur was a true hero until the very end. Back in the present, he wonders what Arthur might be doing at that moment. Then Verokin, the third son of the Valheims, finally appears before him. Looking at his brother, he says that even heroes need a rest. Verokin points out that he used to avoid eye contact, but now he stares directly at him. Confirming the rumor, Crash asks how his brother found the time to visit. Verokin then announces that the academy will be accepting students based on exam results. With a smile, Crash tells his brother he'd better start preparing. Annoyed, Verokin wonders if the boy is mocking him. Boasting about his family's power, he claims to be of pure Valheim blood. He warns him not to get arrogant for defeating Annex, calling the situation a joke. Saying it's normal for a commoner to worry, Crash simply replies, "I imagine so." Verokin gets angry at his tone and asks what he meant by that. Changing the subject, he says he came to deliver a direct order. He then orders Crash to go to the Gweplak Mountains, leaving the boy shocked. He informs him that he will be his guardian and asks if his little brother is scared. Realizing it's a test of strength, he simply agrees to go on the mission. Even if it's a trap, he states that he will find a way out. Seeing that he's leaving, Bianca asks where he's going, and he tells her not to follow. With a smile, she replies that she won't, surprising the older brother. Verokin gets angry, saying it's absurd to send a boy to such an event. Stepping in front of her, Crash confronts him and declares that she is his fiancée. At this, the two brothers stare each other down, not looking away for a second. Without another word, Verokin simply turns and leaves them. Afterward, he gently strokes her hair and tells her she did very well. She replies that she didn't do anything, but he says that's fine. Stroking her hair, he just asks her not to faint again. Before leaving, he tells her he will be back and says goodbye to young Bianca. A dangerous phenomenon, world erosion invades and alters reality. Over time, the environment changes, and the area can be completely transformed. Arriving at the mountains, they realize the place has turned into a large swamp. A soldier reports that the erosion is level 3. He then comments that an intermediate level squad could handle the job. Another soldier points out that Verokin is an advanced specialist and can handle it all easily. At that moment, Verokin turns and gets his younger brother's attention. He says he brought him there so he could get some field experience. With false excitement, he thanks his older brother for the opportunity, but the only reason he was there was for one thing, a secret objective. He wanted to test a new method to control his own rage in battle. Without wasting time, he charges forward and easily slices one of the creatures in half. Meanwhile, the knights complain that the enemies never stop coming. He warns them about the monster's bites and how they should protect themselves in combat. Impressed, a young soldier asks if he's ever fought in a world erosion before. Replying to the soldier, he says he's only 13 years old. Verokin wonders how a failure can be so calm during his first erosion. He remembers that during his first time, his pride was completely shattered. He then realizes his brother's attitude is completely different from his own. With a smirk, he tells Verokin not to compare him to him. Hearing the taunt, his brother becomes visibly irritated by that response. Verokin then places a hand on the hilt of his sword, deep in thought. He then starts to wonder about a future possibility. He considers what would happen if his younger brother grew up like Charlotte. The idea of Crash surpassing him would make him the family failure. Angry, he yells, asking why his brother doesn't just become like him. Crash then calls out to him, pulling him from his dark thoughts. He warns that they're close to where the main creature should be. With a smile, Verokin says that luckily it seems easier than before, but he warns him, saying they need to be even more alert because of that. Explaining the situation, he warns that a single creature sustaining the erosion is dangerous. At this, Verokin yells at the knights not to lose their nerve because of him. Telling them to handle it quickly, he dismisses them into the forest to fight. Deciding to focus on his own goal, he concentrates to begin his plan. With enhanced vision, he says he can now see the erosion's energy. Taking off his mask, he prepares himself and says, all that's left is to absorb the energy, but he admits he's nervous, as the whole process is very dangerous. His eyes then widen from the immense pressure of the energy in his body. Suddenly, he coughs up a huge amount of blood, yelling the word, "Step." Verokin asks if he's okay, and he says he just tripped on the ground. Refusing help, he coughs up more blood and feels the energy's effect. He explains that the energy is like a toxin, but he can handle it. Following the grimoire, he begins to mix his aura with the erosion's energy. His aura then merges with the energy, flowing like a powerful river. His eyes then change, showing the result of the fusion of the two energies. Feeling the energy, he hunches over, trying to resist the advance of the rage in his body. He then understands what the rage is like, realizing that anyone else would have gone insane by now. Because of this, he decides it's time to use that secret family technique. Recalling the story, he remembers the blind ancestor who found the hidden library. Unable to read the grimoires, the ancestor sealed the door again forever. But he left behind a single grimoire so no one else would get trapped. That grimoire taught the secret art he was about to use. A powerful energy then begins to emanate from his entire body. A perception through aura, The technique was known as the sixth sense. With it, he can clearly understand everything happening around him. Using the technique, he realizes the place is no longer shrouded in rage. Seeing the storm of energy subside, he finally overcomes the rage with his power. Despite his success, he wipes the blood from his mouth, feeling the side effect. Knowing it's temporary, he understands the rage can return at any moment. Because of this, he realizes he still needs Bianca's snowdoll curse. Clenching his fist, he says he managed to stabilize his energy, even if just for a moment. For the first time, he feels he has reached a new level of power and control. Just then, he senses a strange presence and turns, wondering what it could be. Before him, a huge creature of flesh with a human face appears out of nowhere. With its eyes closed, the creature's face seems strangely calm and serene at first. Then, the monster's eyes open, revealing a completely hostile and dangerous intent. Attacking the knights, the monster begins to destroy everything in its path. Watching the creature transform, he realizes that it was the core of the Erosion. With a terrifying roar, the monster reveals its true and terrible final form. Completely shocked, Burkeman can't believe what he's seeing right in front of him. At that moment, he also freezes, understanding the gravity of the dangerous situation. Before the two brothers, the demon of 1,000 faces finally reveals itself completely. Holding his sword, Burkeman prepares to lead the attack against the great monster. Then, the blade of his sword begins to glow brightly with his energy. A fiery energy then completely engulfs his entire sword. With his weapon in flames, he prepares to use his technique called Ignis. Amazed, the knights remark that Lord Burkeman's power is spectacular. Looking at the scene, he remembers that skill called Ignis. In a flashback, he recalls the same skill that burned his arm before. Alone, he watches his brother prepare for the coming fight. He remembers how his brother used to be completely unbalanced in combat. He then wonders what could have changed in his brother after so much time. With a smile, he says he hopes nothing has changed about his brother. Meanwhile, the monster attacks the knights, who cry out about the enemy's curse. One of the soldiers screams in fear, questioning the curse that erases faces. Another knight says that if even the senior members are struggling, there's nothing they can do. Seeing the danger, one of the knights warns that they should retreat immediately. Ignoring the warning, Burkeman charges forward, preparing to attack the monster alone. Leaping into the air, he descends with his flaming sword, striking the monster. Hit by the fire, the monster screams in pain from the powerful attack. The impact causes a huge explosion, devastating the entire battle area. Reaching out his hand, he yells for the knights not to give up and to seize the opening. Astonished, the knights are impressed by Lord Burkeman's power in combat. Excited, the soldiers shout to follow their commander's lead in the battle. With a smile, Burkeman wonders if his younger brother is watching all this. He then looks for his brother, but can't find him, wondering if he's dead. Then he realizes the young man wasn't looking at him, but at the monster. Surprised, he turns and looks in the same direction his brother was facing. He then notices the monster is crying tears of pure blood. Seeing this, the faces on the monster's body begin to cry as well. With its eyes completely black, Burkeman realizes this is anything but normal. With a nervous smile, he understands the situation is very bad for everyone. As he moves toward the monster, he is quickly surrounded by its shadowy arms in the air. Feeling an impossible pressure, he wonders what is happening. He then decides they need to kill the demon before the situation gets worse. Shouting for everyone to attack together, he leads a powerful wave of fire against the monster. When he sees the attack didn't work, he questions how that could be possible. He then orders the knights to attack again before the monster transforms. Furious with their hesitation, he yells at the knights for being afraid of the creature. Suddenly, he realizes all his soldiers are completely paralyzed. Realizing the situation, he understands the curse affected them without even touching them. Then he remembers the disturbance and realizes everyone has already been affected. Facing the creature, he understands the trap they have all fallen into. The scene changes as a heavy storm begins to pour down over the entire forest. With a tightness in his chest, he starts struggling to breathe properly. Lying on the ground, he screams in desperation, saying that it's killing him. With a final scream, he feels he's going to die in that dark, rainy forest. Amidst the rain, a huge, shadowy hand moves to attack the young Burkeman. Desperate, he wonders why this is happening to him right now. A voice then says he is going to die because he is simply pathetic. The voice continues, saying he lost his knights and ran away like a coward. Therefore, the voice says, he will die as the great failure that he is. The monster's large hand then lunges forward to strike the young Burkeman on the ground. Screaming in desperation, he tries to shield himself from the blow with his arm and his sword. But the fist hits him squarely, throwing him far away with its force. Verokin's body then falls into the middle of the swamp, sinking into the dark water. Suddenly, he wakes up on solid ground, being dragged by his younger brother. Surprised, he recognizes his brother and tries to understand what happened. With a smile, Crash says his brother has finally woken up. He says he was watching everything from a distance, and that he survived too. He then explains that he pulled him out of the swamp and brought him to a safe place. Verokin gets angry, saying he can't use his aura in that condition. With a smile, he asks if his brother is sure he doesn't need help. Annoyed by the question, Verokin grits his teeth in anger and contempt for his brother. He then shouts that he doesn't need help from a fool like his brother. Suddenly, a noise catches his attention and leaves him completely terrified. Worried, he asks if the demon is still nearby. Looking at the erosion, he says the field may have closed in around them. Terrified, he realizes they can only get out if they kill the thousand-faced demon. Punching the ground, he yells in anger, and his brother calls out to him. He then reveals he has a supreme technique he learned from Lady Charlotte. He says it was this technique that allowed him to fight Annex. Surprised, Verokin wonders if Charlotte would teach her secret art to him. He asks if his brother thinks the technique can defeat the demon. Seeing he's going to die anyway, he says he'd rather at least try. He holds out his hand and says he understands why Verokin doesn't trust him, but he reminds him of Charlotte's strength, asking if he trusts her. Agreeing, he says Charlotte is a genius, and sticks his sword into the puddle, but he warns that if the plan fails, they will both die there together. With a dark smile, he assures his brother that he won't fail. On a rainy night, tension hung over the dark, silent forest. Hidden, Verokin warns that the thousand-faced demon is approaching them. He then asks if Crash is ready with the Ignis, and gets a yes in return. Holding his sword, Crash announces that their showdown begins now. Suddenly, someone lands right in front of them, in the middle of the rain. With his sword in hand, Verokin prepares for the imminent attack. Closing his eyes for a moment, he fully concentrates for the battle. Crash just watches his brother prepare, waiting for his next move. Wielding the sword, Verokin takes his combat stance, ready to fight. Impressed, Crash comments on his brother's incredible concentration and the aura surrounding him. He claims to have never seen an aura as clear and pure as that one. Remembering he didn't believe in it, he wonders how Verokin uses this aura. Calling out to his brother, Crash finally gets Verokin's full attention. Verokin then asks him to use the Ignis, and Crash agrees immediately. Placing his hand over the sword, he transfers the power into the blade. Taking his stance, the ancestor prepares to unleash his full power. After the explosion, he just observes the scene without saying much. Verokin then asks his brother if something was wrong with him. To this, Crash replies that it seems he won't need any help. With wide eyes, he watches the scene, unable to look away. Wielding his weapon, he prepares for the attack that will define the fight. In a memory, he recalls his confrontation with the creature and his defeat. Then he watches Crash advance alone against the approaching enemies. Advancing bravely, Crash prepares to face the giant creature in combat. From a distance, other members of the Valheim family watch the battle unfold. At that moment, everyone's eyes turn to the sword at the center of the action. With a tense expression, Verokin continues to watch the outcome of the imminent confrontation. Finally, Crash unleashes all the power contained in the sword against his opponent. Changing scenes, the image shows a peaceful stream flowing through a field. In the sky, a distant voice calls for his brother, starting a new memory. With his power unleashed, he announces that the battle has finally ended here. In disbelief, Verokin wonders if it all ended so easily. Filled with rage, he then grips the hilt of his sword tighter. Shouting with fury, he tells Crash to die once and for all, but Crash easily defends the blow, blocking his brother's attack without difficulty. Seeing the defense, Verokin is confused and doesn't understand what just happened. With their swords locked, Crash thanks him and says he can no longer use Ignis. Revealing his power, he thanks Verokin for never changing. With that, the conditions to unlock his true power were finally met. First, he needed to receive the Ignis and for Verokin to believe in his power. Second, his brother's pride needed to be completely broken during the fight. He then attacks, saying that the Ignis became his at that very moment. In the background, the thousand-faced demon screams as it is completely defeated. Fallen on the ground, Verokin just hears his brother calling his name. Holding the monster's heart, he says he once wanted to get along with them. Remembering the past, he recalls how they always told him to stay out of it. He then says their hostility made any kind of approach impossible from the start. With the sword at his neck, he says he thought his brother would act differently. He regrets having hoped, since Verokin never truly had that intention. Pressing the blade, he asks if it hurts as much as it hurt him. As Verokin writhes, Crash remembers feeling the same when they burned his arm. Seeing his brother on the ground, he just watches the scene in complete silence. Then he stands still for a moment, looking at the body on the ground. Looking up at the sky, He lets out an ironic laugh at the whole situation. Then he comments on how the day is ironically beautiful for a moment like this. Switching to the Valheim mansion, a guard announces that Verikan's unit has been annihilated. At this, someone explains that the Erosion has been reclassified as rank S for everyone. During the funeral, they comment that Crash only survived because of Verikan's sacrifice. Outraged, a servant shouts, asking why only the family's failure survived. The head butler then orders them to honor the sacrifice made to protect his brother. Asking that the sacrifice not be wasted, he is seen entering the Great Hall. He then realizes they believed his testimony, so there's no reason for them to be suspicious. Walking through the place, he concludes that the mission had excellent results because of Verikan. Recalling the process, he confirms that he has adapted and now controls his sixth sense. Through the Ignis, he shows he has gained the power of the black flame in his hand. He explains that the flames are an ace up his sleeve and that no one else needs to know. Arriving at the door, he prepares to deal with the problem of the official investigation. After a voice grants him entry, he notes that the cause of the problem is unknown. Knowing the truth, he knows the blame lies with the invader who uses their servants. A woman receives him there, saying that Lord Crash had finally arrived. Introducing herself as Saphira, the investigator informs him that they were waiting for him there. Noticing the black star, she surprises him with her sudden perception of the mark. She then comments that she didn't expect to meet him again so soon, leaving the young man quite confused. Calling her an immortal, he decides to propose a direct deal to her. Pointing his finger, he offers to erase her immortality forever. With a different kind of smile, she asks if by any chance he might be the regressor. Revealing her other form, she says that fate sent her to the wrong man. In a flashback, the immortal known as August is shown completely chained and defeated. Before the regression, they tried to steal his immortality, but ultimately failed their mission. Then, Lord Arthur explains that now he can barely regenerate without any power. Mary Diana understands he used servants because his body was cursed and immobile. Annoyed, Sigrun questions if it's truly a pity, recalling the chaos he caused. Grabbing her arm, Sigrun warns her not to act so self-righteous. Then Lord Arthur declares the problem is over, and there will be no more needless fights. With a steady gaze, he comments that it's still a great pity. Crash then appears, agreeing they couldn't steal the enemy's immortality. Damaris then says that even if he were reborn, that would be impossible. He explains that the condition was absolutely impossible for anyone to fulfill. Back in the present, she asks once more if he is the regressor. Revealing her form, she says she was looking for someone completely different from him. Unfazed, Crash asks what makes her think he is one. With a smile, she says that only a regressor would dare propose such a deal. Laughing in his face, Abella says he can't kill her and calls it a lie. Stating he doesn't lie, he reveals the strange power emerging in his hand. With his ability, he charges forward and launches a direct attack at her. Then he explains that his power can even steal her immortality. Surprised by the revelation, she just clenches her fist tightly without reacting. Then she reveals that for centuries she has waited for someone capable of finally killing her. Seeing that he is the one, she asks what the condition for the deal is. He explains that he needs help, as his ability only works if he is stronger. Therefore, he asks her to make him her own apprentice. Saying she would sell her soul, she accepts his deal without hesitation. Assuming her other form, she introduces herself to the young man as Crimson Garden August. She then promises she will turn him into the strongest man who ever lived. Feeling the pressure of her aura, he realizes her power is overwhelming. Remembering her power, he knows that with her help, he can become stronger. With a clenched fist, he vows to protect his world with this borrowed power. Understanding the rule, he knows he can no longer regress on his own, because if the world perishes again, he will disappear along with everything else. Happy to have her by his side, he calls her Crim while extending his hand. Hearing the name, she questions him, seemingly not recognizing the word he said. With a slight smile, she calls him Crash, changing the tone of the conversation. Next, she demands he call her master and flicks him. Relieved, he says he can now finally leave that place forever. Watching him leave, she asks if he no longer lives in that large mansion. Just then, a hooded woman appears, while he barely remembers his parents. Informed that his mother is requesting him, he is surprised by the unexpected summons. The woman confirms the request, adding that she also has another message for him. She then reveals that the head of the family wants to meet him, leaving him shocked. He immediately imagines his father sensed something through the connection with the stars. Asking him to wait, the woman informs him that Lady Arya wants him at the mansion. Annoyed, he asks if the order didn't come directly from his own father. Announcing he's leaving, he says he will only return when his father calls for him. Thinking for a moment, he figures his father might come to him personally. Leaving the mansion behind, his carriage departs without looking back. Passing through the main city, his journey finally begins for real. Following the road, he continues on his way, far from his old home. Inside the carriage, he celebrates, saying he's finally free from that place. But the being at the window orders the rude apprentice to open the door at once. Surprised by the bird, he asks if its color doesn't draw too much attention. Explaining it can change color, it transforms into a common black crow. Crash then replies that the color is as black as her soul. Asked about her body, the crow says her real form cannot move. Without revealing the truth, he knows that the real regressor is actually Arthur. As the sun sets, the carriage continues its journey down the long road. Changing the subject, the crow warns him about a girl at Blue Pine Hall. Confused by the warning, he doesn't understand what she meant. Welcoming him, a hooded girl receives Crash back at the mansion. Whispering in his ear, the crow says she has fulfilled her promise to return. Running towards them, the butler Ariad asks if anything happened during the trip. Handing him a letter, the butler informs him it arrived from Master Darling. Reading the note, he discovers that Darling has completed the cure he had requested. Ariad then advises him to treat Darling well, as he will be a great benefactor. Changing the subject, the butler mentions that Lady Bianca has been very worried about him. He explains that she prepared a carriage to visit him as soon as she heard about the erosion. Hearing the news, he finally realizes the consequence of her concern. Without checking her curse, he sees a strange energy begin to manifest. Just then, the first condition to unlock the seal is revealed. Be friends with Bianca. With the condition met, the unlocking process is finally completed successfully. Shocked by the result, he sees that Bianca's first lock has been released. Seeing him stare, she asks if there's something on her face. He says no, just that he wanted to introduce her to someone new. As she reaches out to take the bird, he introduces the crow, Krim. Hugging the bird tightly, he asks if she really likes animals that much. Averting his gaze for a second, he remains silent for a brief moment. Then, the second condition is revealed, to become the most precious person to her. The possibilities are then shown, be it a father, a son, a friend, or a lover. Since he's her fiancé, he says the lover option seems most likely. As the girl tries to grab him, the crow struggles to escape. With a fixed stare, she continues to watch the scene in complete and total silence. Seeing the whole scene unfold, the crow flies back to his shoulder. The crow comments that she wouldn't let go, and Crash says she liked him. As night falls, the crow turns and asks what's wrong. Telling him to cut the chatter, the crow says it wants to test his strength. Lying on the ground, completely exhausted, he hears the crow say it was disappointing. Hearing the taunt, he replies that's why he considers himself a failure. Lying on the ground, he explains that everything he achieved was through effort and knowledge. Trying to get up, he says that in 5 years, someone talented would easily surpass him. But the crow lands in front of him, interrupting with a however. In its imposing form, it declares that in its presence, talent means nothing. It then explains that with its ability, Crash can simply steal any existing talent. Promising to elevate him, it says it will take him to the top, where everything will be his. Taking a step forward, the master prepares to make his final request. In his human form, he orders Crash to also steal his own immortality. With a clenched fist, Crash accepts the challenge. Full of determination for the future, facing the gate under the moon, he confirms that this is their plan. A few days pass, and the scene shifts back to the front of the grand mansion. Arriving excitedly, Darling Danforlion calls out to him with a euphoric shout. In a training stance, Crash asks since when he suddenly became his darling. Stretching, he asks if the newcomer brought what he had asked for earlier. Showing the vial, he announces that the item is finally ready to be used. When Darling asks if Crash still has doubts, Crash tells him he's always been a genius. At the compliment, Darling is visibly surprised and speechless at first. Then he hugs Crash tightly, who yells at him to stop. After being pushed away, he remembers some very important news he has to share. Saying that Annex has changed, he leaves Crash completely confused about what happened. He reveals that Annex had stopped training, but came back after the last incident. Annoyed by the news, Crash complains that Annex is an idiot who just causes trouble. From the branch, the crow comments that Valheim's strength was truly impressive. It then says that this could work, and that it was thinking of a tonic for him. Suggesting he ask the genius, it tells Crash to have him make the potion. Being a rare elixir, the potion increases the user's aura and strength. Seeing Crash worried, the crow assures him it will just tell him the recipe. Calling out to Darling, Crash asks for another favor, receiving a very sarcastic reply. Asking him to make the potion, he surprises Darling, who asks if it was an inspiration. Saying he'll cover the cost, he explains that he remembers things from his regression. At that, the crow tells him to repeat it, so Crash begins to list the necessary ingredients. Continuing the explanation, he details the complete recipe for the alchemist beside him. After hearing everything, Darling seems to finally grasp the complexity of the secret formula. Jotting everything down hastily, he wonders about a specific part of the recipe. Impressed, Darling asks where he learned it, and the crow says it's a Valheim formula. He then says he can make it, but the real problem is getting the ingredients. Explaining the difficulty, he says the fungus only grows in Heart's territory. To solve this, Crash says he'll ask for help from his fiancée from the Heart's family. With only the dragon grass left, he comments that it's a very mythical herb. Warning of the danger, he mentions that the grass can be bought on the black market. As Crash considers the option, Darling offers another way to get the item. He then reveals that the prize for the Empire's tournament is that exact golden grass. Remembering he's a Valheim, Crash explains that his participation would cause a diplomatic issue, but Darling reassures him and offers a potion, saying the genius has a plan. Holding the vial, he asks if the potion is meant to make him invisible. Suddenly, he screams in desperation as his body begins to change completely. Transformed, he's told the disguise is perfect for the open entry tournament. At this, Darling hugs him and says it would be great if he joined his harem. Perched nearby, the crow just watches the whole commotion without moving. Crushing the vial in his hand, he asks if this is some kind of joke. Completely terrified, Darling backs away and starts apologizing profusely to the young man. A few days later, Crash is training intensely in the room, preparing for the fight. With a focused gaze, he and his master face off before the training begins. Moving forward, the crow starts to attack with a series of fast, precise strikes. Spinning in the air, he continues the offensive, giving the boy no chance to react. Trying to defend himself, Crash dodges the attacks coming from all directions. With wide eyes, he manages to predict the next attack and prepares to defend. Using his sword, he barely blocks the blow, avoiding the hit. Even while dodging several strikes, he ends up getting hit by others during the training. Knocking him down, the crow says that's enough training for today. He then explains that the technique he taught is an advanced counter-attacking skill. Combined with his intuition, he says Crash has reached a level close to precognition. He then adds that with the elixir, his body will catch up to his mind. Saying they need to leave, he gets a confirmation from the boy, who is still on the floor. Now on his feet and wearing his cape, he prepares for the next journey. Holding the potion, he asks if the other guy brought what he had asked for. In a flashback, he asks if the potion will keep him hidden during the tournament. Annoyed, he says his friend should have given him this potion from the start. Asking about the duration, he hears the effect lasts for about a day. Holding the item, he complains that his friend is useful, but also exhausting. As he's welcomed, he hears that everyone was waiting for his arrival. The butler explains he has arranged for a merchant to help with the illegal border crossing. He praises Ariad's work, saying the mansion is secure. With a smile, the butler accepts the task and prepares for what's to come. Vowing to protect the place, he declares he won't even let the head of the family inside. Turning to the carriage, he remembers the day Darling gave him the cure. Kneeling, a man thanks him for curing his daughter, saying he has no more regrets. But Crash interrupts him and orders the man to serve him until told otherwise. Questioning the man, he asks if that isn't a small price to pay. With tears in his eyes, the man agrees and promises he will survive anything. With a smile, Crash says he can finally forget Ariad's past betrayal. As he begins to say his goodbyes, he has one more person to thank before leaving. With a basket in her hand, Bianca listens as he thanks her for the favor she did. He tells her she needs to rest, but she says she'll be back as soon as she gets the fungus. Handing him the basket, she says she'll wait for him at Blue Pine Hall. No rush. With a smile, he agrees and promises to return as soon as he can. Opening the basket, she finds sandwiches and asks if that was what the noise was about. Saying she'll eat later, she just watches the scene with her usual expression. Wishing him a safe trip, she hears him ask her to be very careful as well. Preparing for the journey, he announces that they are heading to the Empire. During the trip, he trains with his sword, preparing for the upcoming tournament. In the middle of the forest, he absorbs the energy of the erosion to strengthen his body. Flying beside him, the crow asks how the power of erosion is behaving. He explains that the last 5 days have been peaceful, thanks to the merchant's safe route. Suddenly, the merchant woman's apple falls to the ground, catching the crow's attention. Seeing the woman surrounded, the crow realizes there's a problem with the carriage. Arriving with his group, the bandit leader announces he'll take the lead. Grabbing her face, he startles her, and she regrets not having sensed them. Hopeless, she wonders if they're going to die like this in the forest. Suddenly, a surprise attack hits the bandits, catching them off guard. With his hand outstretched, Crash emerges from the shadows to help the woman in danger. Seeing the interference, the bandit leader wonders what the kid is doing. Angrily, he orders his men to finish him once and for all. Surrounding the boy, one of the bandits yells that he can't use weapons here. Pointing his sword, he asks if they mean this weapon. Advancing with speed, he attacks the group, striking everyone with his sharp blade. With a serious look, he faces the bandit leader, ready for a confrontation. Impressed, the leader says he's no ordinary kid. Raising his axe, he swears he'll end it all in a single blow. He then attacks, but Crash easily defends the blow, surprising the bandit. Counterattacking, he hits the bandit with a swift strike, ending the fight right there. Unable to hit him, the bandit yells that tricks like that won't work. Preparing a new strike, he announces he'll use a special technique to finish this. Remaining calm, he simply observes the bandit's movement without showing any reaction. With a confident smile, the bandit says he finally caught him off guard. Using his phantom axe, he launches a powerful attack towards the boy. At the last second, Crash reacts to the imminent blow, focusing his gaze on the attack. But at the moment of impact, something unexpected happens and interrupts the bandit's attack. Then he reveals a new technique, preparing a counterattack that surprises his opponent. At this, the bandit is completely shocked, not understanding what is happening. With his new skill, he moves forward, and the bandit calls him a disciple of the butcher dog. With his sword on his shoulder, he asks if Crash is one of the butcher's men. It's then explained that the butcher is Burkeman, a servant of the world invader, destined to slaughter people. He was ultimately stopped by the powerful Charlotte Valheim. After fending off the attack, Crash wonders what's really going on here. Seeing the newspaper, he remembers that this incident made Charlotte famous throughout the Empire. Wondering about the subordinates, he doesn't understand why they're in this area. Seeing the bodies on the ground, the merchant wonders if it isn't too soon. With a bad feeling, his expression turns serious and very suspicious. Turning his back, he tells them to grab the dragon grass and get out of there. Arriving in the imperial capital, Ceylon, they prepare for the next stage. Near the registration sign, he observes the bustling crowd of competitors. Looking at the crowd, he comments on the number of people who showed up to fight. From the balcony, Princess Sisley watches the competitors, finding them all very interesting. Excited, she vows to take all her diamonds with her to the Laheln Academy. Covering her mouth, she gets annoyed and tells them not to mention her father's name. Calling out to the princess, her assistant seems worried about the girl's behavior. With her hands over her ears, Princess Sisley tries to ignore her father's voice. Since she was 7, she was already solving math problems far too advanced for her age. Seeing her talent, her tutors said she could rewrite the Empire's history. With this, she became a potential candidate to take the throne in the future. Crumpling the paper, she knew that getting involved in the succession would be certain death. Tossing everything aside, she decided she needed to make everyone give up on her completely. To survive, she had to become a completely different person from who she was before. From then on, she used her mind to act like an uncontrollable troublemaker. Over time, even those who praised her began to think they had misjudged her. Watching the princess, the assistant knows her behavior is just an act. From the balcony, the princess points and tells her assistant to look at a specific person. Observing the young man, she comments on his dark aura and half-closed eyes. She also points to the crow perched on the hooded young man's shoulder. Questioning if he's from Valheim, the assistant doubts the enemy family would show up. Asking them not to underestimate her instincts, the princess prepares to approach him. Leaping from the balcony, she shouts that she's going to check out the suspicious guy up close now. Landing in the middle of the crowd, she announces it's time to expose his identity, but she trips on someone's foot, suddenly falling flat on her face. With her face on the ground, she's completely shocked by what just happened. Standing in front of him, she can't believe he made her trip. Grabbing her arm, he calls her a wild child in a scolding tone. Then he tells her to watch where she's going and turns to leave. Noticing his calm tone and attitude, she becomes suspicious of the mysterious young man. Realizing she recognized him, he regrets running into the 4th princess here. With his registration complete, he says that now he just needs to find an empty inn. But he finds a sign warning that the inn is currently full. Every door he finds shows the same sign, leaving him with no options. Standing on the stairs, he realizes that every place in the city is full. With nowhere to stay, he says it looks like he'll be sleeping outside. Hearing someone call him, he turns around to find an unexpected person speaking to him. An old lady asks if he's entering the tournament and offers him a place to stay. With a gentle smile on her face, she waits for the hooded young man's answer. Even though the crow finds it suspicious, Crash accepts the kind lady's offer. Being scolded, he says he slept in his past life and won't do it again. With disdain, the crow just complains about regressors as it follows the young man down the street. Arriving at the house, the old lady announces they've finally reached their destination. Going up the stairs, he thanks her, and she tells him he can use the room on the second floor. Relieved, he celebrates having a bed, but then he sees the princess standing nearby. With a smile, she recognizes him and says he's the guy from earlier. Covering his face, he's speechless at being discovered by the Empire's princess. Deciding to ignore her, he heads for his room, trying not to be recognized by her anymore. As he goes to open the door, he comments on how strange the whole situation is. Being ignored, the princess wonders if he likes boys, remembering Darling. Hearing her assumption, he gets annoyed as an embarrassed Darling appears in his memory. Hiding in his cloak, he says she's not his type and that there are others. Saying he's under no obligation to answer, he keeps walking and ignores her completely. With a smile on her face, the princess decides to follow the mysterious young man through the house. From the top of the stairs, he tells the girl to stop following him. Ignoring his request, she invites him to eat so they can get to know each other better. Refusing the invitation, he says it would be too much trouble and that he doesn't want to go. Maintaining his expression, he just continues on his way without paying her any more attention. Surprising him, she asks if he acts this way even though he knows she's a princess. With a challenging look, she calls him Lord Crad from the kingdom of Starin. Shocked, he realizes she figured out his identity from their brief interaction. Trying to throw her off, he tells the children to finish their dinner and get ready for bed. Annoyed by his taunt, she asks who he's calling a child. Her assistant then asks if the boy is really from Starin, and the princess confirms it. Explaining her reasoning, she says that people from Starin have a unique and distinct intonation. From afar, she comments that he can't hide the small details in his speech. With a disturbed look, she notes that he knows who she is, but she doesn't recognize him. Her assistant suggests capturing him, but the princess stops her, telling her not to interfere. Changing the subject, she asks about her sister, and the assistant confirms her predictions. She reveals that Princess Sigrun seems like a completely different person now. With a frightened look, the princess says that's not the sister she knows. Holding the bars, she realizes her bad feeling was right all along. With her eyes closed, she has a vision of the palace drowning in blood. At the tournament, a fighter finishes his opponent with a powerful blow on the arena floor. Another competitor smashes into the wall, showing his strength and winning his fight as well. With the qualifiers over, the 4 victors are called to leave the stage. In the arena, the spectators wonder who the young man is and comment on his strange crow. Remembering the princess, he thinks that a conversation with her could be very dangerous. With a focused gaze, he tries to concentrate on what's next. At least the girl didn't affect his performance in the preliminary rounds of the fighting competition. Approaching another victor, a man says that the weak didn't stand a chance. Stopping in front of him, the bandaged man comments on the rumors he's heard about him. Then he asks if Crash is an assassin from the Night Crows, which surprises him. An explanation reveals that the Night Crows are a feared organization from the Empire's Underworld. Denying the accusation, he says the man is mistaken and that he isn't part of them. Saying he doesn't want to fight, the man suggests they be friends from the Underworld. Extending his hand, he introduces himself and formally calls Crash a Night Crow. Suspicious of his gaze, the crow realizes there's something very wrong with that guy. Flying up, the crow announces it will handle the situation alone from now on. Confused, the bandaged man suddenly freezes as if in shock. Completely unresponsive, he begins to stagger backward, about to fall to the ground. Asking what was done, he's told it was a simple brainwashing spell. With the crow's permission, Crash decides to call the man over for a quick chat. Under control, the man reveals that the Night Crows were almost wiped out. He continues, saying they are at the tournament on the orders of their new master. When Crash asks who it is, the man seems confused for a brief moment. While eating, a man is revealed to be the new master, the second prince of the Empire. The crow asks what's wrong, seeing that Crash has become thoughtful and serious. He then explains that the Night Crows were a trap to monitor the nobles. Therefore, their master has always been the royal family, which makes no sense. Knowing that even the lower ranks know the leader, he deduces it must be a rumor. Thinking for a moment, he recalls that the second prince was strengthening the first prince's faction. With this information, he realizes who benefits most from all this chaos. He finally understands that the true mastermind behind everything is Sigrun Ifania. In disbelief, he wonders if Arthur's memory inheritance actually worked. Knowing the future, he deduces that Sigrun's likely target would be someone else. Seeing the scene, he realizes she was the one who hid the dragon pearl. Then she took her own life, leaving Arthur as a powerless puppet emperor. To make her plan easier, he understands that Sigrun plans to eliminate Sisley first. If she becomes the empress, the empire will surely collapse. In turn, the empire's fall will trigger a massive increase in the world's erosion. Determined to stop her, He declares he'll have to steal Sigrun's special ability. Asking the crow for help, he's told not to blindly trust the future he knows. But the crow says that just this once, it will help him with whatever he needs. When asked about the man, Crash says to leave him be, as he has already served his purpose. With a different look, the crow decides it will turn the man into its servant. Ordering him to return to his post, the man receives a black star on his face. Watching the man leave, the crow asks what their next move will be. With his face in his hands, he announces it's time to use the disguises. He explains they will infiltrate the tournament and hunt down the real night crows. In a dark room, the true leader of the crows grows angry with the imposter, Crash. Pulling his mask down, he prepares to show his true face. With a furious glare, he swears the imposter will pay dearly for this. In the tournament arena, Crash finishes his opponent with a chokehold on the ground. Announced as the winner, he raises the crow to celebrate with the crowd. The crowd goes wild, calling his victory amazing and unbelievable. He realizes that everyone now believes he is a true night crow. Seeing the princess in the stands, he hopes the real crows show up soon. Waving at him, the princess ignores the warning and continues to watch the fights. At the end of the day, he finds her. She tells him she heard about his dominant victory. Surprised by his strength, she says he's no ordinary boy. Asked about his gaze, Crash keeps a straight face and remains silent. Saying it's nothing, he comments that she's had a very complicated life. Turning his back, he just warns her to be careful and watch her back. With a hand on her head, she gets frustrated and prepares for the main event. Looking at the door, she's sure something happened and wonders about him. Calling her assistant, the princess asks if she can trust the hired Imperial spies. The assistant replies that she'll check again, just to be absolutely sure. Watching the princess, he deduces she's already figured out Sigrun's entire plan. Turning away, he wonders if she knows he's just pretending. Suddenly a voice calls him, and he turns to face the man. The man then asks if he's having fun pretending to be a crow. Behind him, the crow's servant appears, making the situation strangely familiar to him. With a smile, he says he didn't expect the real crows to show up so soon. With 2 daggers in his hands, the man prepares to fight the imposter. Moving quickly, he launches a swift attack at the hooded young man, but Crash easily defends the blow, revealing his own 2 blades to him. Blocked, the man is surprised but continues his relentless attack. Dodging, Crash narrowly avoids the blow, escaping the attack. Grabbing his arm, the man warns that once caught, he's nothing. With a furious look, he prepares his next move to end the fight. A strange energy begins to emanate from his arm, changing the shape of his hand. With a laugh, he yells that this is the end for the imposter boy. But suddenly, a kick hits his arm, instantly stopping the attack. Attacked by several men, he's surprised and doesn't understand what's happening. One of the men lands a strong punch on the face of the Night Crow's leader. Standing there, Crash warns that black magic with world erosion doesn't work on him. Calling out the name Evelesk, he surprises the true leader of the Night Crows. Pointing at her chest, he asks where Sigrun is, as he needs to speak with her. With a finger on her chest, he proposes a deal for the 2 of them. He then says that in return, she will tell him everything about Sigrun's plan. Remembering the Necromancer, he recalls the world invader, Ivalesk Benapochi, the crow. In a flashback, he tells the girl that her fate is more cursed. He remembers that Arthur brought her and that no one trusted her for being an invader. Walking down the hall, he regrets not knowing she was actually the crow. Connecting the dots, he realizes that everything has been pointing to Evelesk all along. During training, the crow comments that he's being too harsh today. Seeing the state of the room, he says he needs to be firm with that person. Scared, the girl screams, and he says she gets arrogant if he isn't firm. Telling her to look up, he hears the girl ask what he's doing. He then explains that he's going to show her his ability firsthand. Right there. Using his power, he says the target is the heart that belongs to her. With the Black Hood ability, he reveals the many locks sealing her heart. Closing his eyes, he realizes that with so many conditions, the standard approach won't work. Facing the girl, he says he can retrieve her heart if she gives him permission. Without waiting, he moves closer and prepares for the next step of his plan. She gives her permission, but he warns that he needs more than words. Desperate, she asks what to do, and the crow tells her to listen. Questioning if she's tired of her current life, he makes her reflect on everything. He tells her to imagine a future where she can relax all day without any worries. But he warns her that if he fails, she'll have to work for the royal family. Screaming that she doesn't want to work anymore, she unleashes all her necromancer power. Surprised, he says that this is the true power of a mighty necromancer like her. Crying, she says she's already worked for 1,000 years and begs for his help. He then explains that she needs to entrust her heart to him so she'll never have to work again. Screaming that she doesn't need the heart, she hears that it's still not enough. He then asks her to offer her heart in exchange for her deepest desire. Placing a hand on her head, he asks her to trust him completely. Screaming with all her might, She reveals she wants to live an easy and carefree life. Still crying, she begs him to finally take her heart once and for all. With a smile, he says she did well and is finally free. Excited, she tells him to hurry, but Crash stops her right away. He then informs her that he'll only return her heart when everything is finally over. Without further delay, he asks Evalesk what Sigrun's real plan is. Asking if he knows the swordswoman Sarah, she prepares to reveal the plan. She explains that she received orders to eliminate Sarah and use her body to kill the princess. In a flashback, Sarah is wounded and wonders if her opponent is stronger. With her spear in hand, Mary Diana appears for the confrontation, ready to fight. She says Sarah should be proud to die for the empire she protected so fiercely. Charging forward with her spear, she lands a fatal blow to the swordswoman's chest on the ground. As she falls, Sarah remembers the nickname they gave her, Mad Blade Sarah Vetera. Looking at the body, Mary Diana receives Sigrun's orders for her next move. The order is to use Sarah's body to assassinate the fourth princess of the empire. Gazing at the moon, she remarks that it's been a year since her return. Missing Arthur, she says she's doing all of this for him and Sigrun. The scene shifts to a house shortly before the end of the world. In a flashback, the girls talk, preparing for what's to come. Remembering their meeting, Arthur asks them to meet in front of the peace statue. Excited by the promise, she went to the arranged location with great anticipation in her heart. But Lord Arthur never showed up for the meeting, leaving her waiting for him. Alone, she realizes that neither Arthur nor Abella are anywhere to be seen. Walking down the street, she wonders where he could be, since she's waited a year. With her hand on a post, she says she must believe and will regain her strength. Carrying her spear, she vows that she must push herself and complete her mission. Stopping in front of Evalesk, a large man with a sack calls out to her. He then asks if the crow boy from the tournament was one of her bodies. Confirming, Evalesk is told it was a nice touch to use the crow to draw attention. Threatening her, Mary Diana warns her not to do anything while Sigrun is away. Frightened by the threat, the Necromancer agrees without even being able to look back. Watching the man leave, Mary Diana comments that she usually collects ugly bodies. With a smile, she asks why Evalesk kept one as cute as Crad. With a smile, Crash says it's a shame that he's just a body. In the finals, he faces his opponent, a 14-year-old commoner named Pire. Holding his weapon, he knows that Pire only appears to be a kind-hearted young man. Drawing his sword, he reveals that Pire is one of the warriors of the Azure generation. Next, Pire says that he doesn't like murder and doesn't seem to be the type. He continues, saying they can both stop being crows and live normally at the academy. Facing Crash, he says that he hasn't changed at all and is still the same as before. Asking him to give up, Pire charges forward, ready for the final battle between them. Wielding his weapon, Crash thinks that Pire is a kind and good-hearted friend. The judge interrupts, giving Pire some advice before the fight truly begins. With a serious look, Crash warns that clinging to hope will prevent him from resisting. Pire is shocked, recognizing the stance of rejection Crash takes before him. The judge then lunges with a surprise attack, revealing himself as a hidden enemy. Using the 10 steps of the shadow, he attacks, saying the fight is disappointing. Seeing the move, Crash is surprised, recognizing the technique of the incoming attack. Attacked from two sides, Pire manages to defend against both blows. Surprised, the judge wonders if he managed to read his feint. Seeing that all his blows are blocked, he realizes that Crash knows his moves. Noticing the look of astonishment, Crash thinks that he's looking at him as if he were a ghost. In his thoughts, he says it's like someone who has already died once. Remembering the past, he knows that Pire created the technique and trained very hard. With this memory, he realizes he understands the boy better than the boy understands himself. Unable to hit him, Pire says that his attacks can't reach his opponent. He then congratulates him for awakening the true potential of his dull blade. Looking at Pire, he just asks him to become even stronger. Then he attacks, saying it's in case his hope is ever destroyed. With the victory, the judge announces that the grand winner of the tournament is Crad. Looking at the arena, he wonders if they will meet again in the future. In a memory, Pire thanks him for lifting the curse that bound him. With a determined smile, he promises that he will work hard and protect this world. With the vision of the past, he says it was the first thank you he ever received. Turning his back, he simply says goodbye and that he'll see him at the academy. Fallen on the ground, the judge laments, as his sword and disguise lie discarded. After the tournament, he says they will meet again in Lahelm soon. With a smile, Prince Chiffon congratulates him, praising his performance as the Night Crow. He then imagines that with the crows, the throne will naturally be his in the future. Before the prince, Evalesk says it's an honor to gain his royal favor. Suddenly, a man approaches them, and the prince becomes alert at the interruption. Stepping forward, a group of knights begins to surround everyone. Annoyed, the man asks who they are and how they dare to interrupt the second prince. Surrounded, The prince wonders why the Black Dragon Knights are present. A woman steps forward, preparing to announce the accusation against him. With a firm gaze, she announces that Prince Chiffon is under arrest for attempted murder. Surprised, he shouts and asks why he would kill that fool Sisley, his sister. The woman then reveals they found a signed order from him in the crow's hideout, shouting that it's ridiculous. He denies writing any such order. He then orders Evelesque to execute the traitors who are framing him. Suddenly, a voice asks who exactly was killed in this whole situation. With the princess by her side, Sarah asks when exactly she was killed. Watching the scene unfold, Crash comments that this is all very strange. Not understanding anything, Mary Diana wonders how he was so convinced of her death. That night, Mary Diana ran desperately, realizing her premonition had come true. In another scene, she questions Sigrun about the loyalty of the spies they hired. Deciding to check for herself, she recalls that all of them had betrayed them. Then, she wonders who could be targeting Lady Sisley at that moment. With a bad feeling, a dark creature appears and surprises her in the hallway. Then a mysterious voice offers its immortal power in exchange for her life force. Confused, she realizes the crow's voice is speaking in her mind. Suddenly, an energy completely envelops her, making her scream uncontrollably. During the process, a strange, glowing mark appears inside her eye. Grabbing her face, she asks what that creature just did to her. Right after, an enemy with a spear appears right behind her in the hallway. Turning slowly, he stares at her and seems to question if she's the target. Before she could react, the enemy's spear pierces through Mary Diana's chest. Back in the present, she and Sigrun remember that this power saved her. In front of everyone, Sigrun orders the vice captain's arrest on suspicion of espionage. With a tense expression, the vice captain watches the situation unfold before her. Then Sigrun says she came with the knights thinking the two of them were dead. Giving the order, Sigrun tells Mary Diana to act and handle the situation right there. With a powerful blow, Mary Diana completely shatters the shield of the knight in front of her. Seeing the spear stop the attack, the vice captain wonders what is happening. In a flashback, she remembers the order she received to assassinate Princess Sigrun. But the clever princess figured everything out, completely ruining the traitor's plan. She then decides she needs to eliminate Sigrun, as she has become a major obstacle. Then she clutches the object in her hand, beginning to channel an unknown power. With a determined gaze, she loudly orders Evelesque to kill the princess. Suddenly, a pain hits her, and she loses control of her own ability. She then says she can't disobey the order that was engraved on her heart. Desperate, a figure emerges from her body as she screams for Crash's help. At that moment, Crash Valheim's hand appears and intercepts the ongoing attack. Clutching his chest, Crash prepares to intervene in the battle that has just begun. In desperation, she realizes the object on her chest has simply vanished. In a flashback, it's shown that the plan to eliminate the princess failed. Furthermore, the attempt to overthrow the second prince also came to nothing, and to make matters worse, she also lost Evelesque's heart in the midst of the confusion. Realizing everything went wrong, she is completely devastated by her total failure. But then, she decides she will kill the princess with her own hands right there. Seeing an opportunity, she prepares to attack while everyone is focused on Evelesque. Taking a step forward, she propels herself to begin her high-speed advance. With so much force in her push-off, the ground cracks completely under her feet. Using her ability, she charges toward the princess at an impressive speed. Getting very close, she readies her spear for the final blow against the young woman. But at the last second, Crash's weapon appears and blocks her attack. The tip of the spear stops inches from the target, halted by his defense. Surprised, Mary Diana and Sigrun see that it was Crash who appeared to protect them. Indignant, she asks how a mere corpse managed to stop her divine spear like that. With a smile, he says her mentality is still the same as ever. Completely shocked, she asks how he knows her, not understanding the situation. Seizing the opportunity, Lord Arthur shouts for his men to capture that person immediately. With a quick movement, his hand intercepts and throws the spear aside. Surrounded by guards, Mary Diana screams at them to let her go and return her weapon. Now immobilized, she realizes she made a terrible mistake by exposing herself like that. She then regrets interfering, even though the plan was already completely exposed. As she is taken away by the guards, she desperately screams for help from Sigrun and Arthur. Worried, Sigrun runs to Crash and asks if he's okay, but he says no. Covering his mouth, he says he barely managed to defend and is still far from being a master. He explains that he defended himself with the necklace, and Sigrun says the important thing is that he's safe. The princess then blushes. watching him from the corner of her eye with a slightly different gaze. Taking advantage of the confusion, Lord Arthur orders his men to search for other conspirators in the area. As he begins to sink into the ground, he warns Sisley to be careful of her siblings. Seeing him leave, she asks him to wait, but he says he's already used to it. Mary Diana questions his words, while he simply says goodbye and prepares to leave. With a downcast gaze, Sigrun laments that he left without giving her a chance to thank him. So she decides she will go after him at the academy to repay her debt. Elsewhere, Crash explains that his teleportation for people has certain limitations. Shortly after, he hands her the special orchid she asked for, saying it was a lot of work. Fulfilling his promise, he tosses the heart to Evelesk, who is quite surprised. She says he seems different from the invaders, leaving Crash confused by the term. The crow then explains that he used an erosion power to stop the attack. Because of this, Evelesk believed the story, thinking he was the same type as her. As he sits down, he is interrupted by the crow, who brings urgent news from his servant. Then, the crow warns that there seems to be a big problem with his fiancée Bianca. Confused by the news, Crash can only ask what's going on. The crow then explains that an assassin has invaded the mountains and his fiancée has disappeared. Hearing this, he's shocked, picturing the danger she's in. Gritting his teeth, he understands the bad feeling he had when he met that disciple. Desperate, he yells at Evelesk that they need to get to Hardened Hearts as fast as possible. Though confused by the order, she agrees, and the carriage speeds down the road. Once inside the vehicle, she asks how an intruder could have a fiancé. Thinking for a moment, she recalls that the Valheim's fiancé also lives in that place. Suddenly, he turns and tells her he's not an intruder. Beginning to transform, he reveals that the name Crad is just a disguise. Revealing his identity, he says he is Crash Valheim, the youngest son of the family. Completely in shock, Evelesk drops the heart she was holding. On the floor, the heart begins to pulse as she repeats the name Valheim. Inside the carriage, she screams that she's been with a Valheim this whole time. Arriving at the camp, he blames himself, saying this is all his fault. Full of guilt, he regrets not being honest, as Bianca never would have gone there. Then, the servant asks Jenica why she went to the mountains. Explaining the situation, she says Bianca went alone, and she followed her later. In a flashback, Jenica finds Bianca and tells her to go home right away. Looking at her sister, Bianca calls out to her, trying to talk a little longer. Right after, she defends Crash, stating he's not a failure like they say. Jenica then questions why she came, but Bianca says she can do whatever she wants. Afterward, she says she's going to deliver the fungus and tells her sister to leave. It's revealed that her sister hates her, blaming her for their mother's death. Apologizing, Bianca says she'll be back as soon as she finds what she's looking for. After hearing her response, Jenica just watches her in silence, not knowing what to say. With a clenched fist, she laments that things shouldn't have happened that way. Suddenly, a shadowy figure attacks as a voice asks if it can join in. Startled by the attack, Jenica turns to see what was happening. In front of them, the assassin Burkeman appears and greets the two young women with a smile. Asking who the intruder is, Jenica stares at the bodies of the guards on the ground. Then, a guard yells for them to run, but Burkeman finishes him off without any trouble. With a malicious look, he turns towards the two frightened girls. Desperate, Jenica pulls her sister and yells for her to hurry and get away. Then the two start running through the snow as fast as they can together. Hiding, they see the villain asking where they are, just toying with them. Bianca then tells her sister she promised Crash she would deliver that special fungus, but Jenica replies that she doesn't want to die and doesn't care about the fiancé. Getting an idea, she says they can both use their artifacts to walk on the snow. She then explains that the crevice can be used to delay the enemy chasing them, but Burkeman catches up to them and challenges them to try and escape the dangerous place. At the edge, Jenica apologizes, while Bianca asks if she's ready. Pointing to the other side, she announces they're both going to jump right there. Scared, Jenica warns they'll die, but Bianca says it's their only chance. Seeing the enemy approaching, Bianca tells her sister that now is the time. With a shove, Jenica throws Bianca toward the edge of the cliff. Burkeman reaches out, completely shocked by the scene he just witnessed. At the edge, he shouts, asking if they're trying to kill themselves like that. Looking down, he sees they've fallen onto a ledge on the mountain. Finding the situation amusing, he jumps off the cliff to go after the girls. Bianca then asks Jenica to trust her, leaving her sister even more confused. Not understanding, Jenica asks her to wait, trying to process the dangerous situation. As the enemy grabs for her, Bianca shoves her sister away, ensuring her escape. Landing safely, Jenica desperately screams the name of the sister who was left behind. Devastated, she cries and laments Bianca's sacrifice, who gave herself up for her. Covering her face, she says that was the last thing she was able to see. She recounts that the search party said the snow must have cushioned the fall, Full of guilt, she regrets suggesting they go to the mountain's crevice zone. Looking at the fungus, she says they could have avoided all of this if she had just delivered it. The servant tries to calm her, saying that Lady Bianca is surely safe and sound. Understanding everything, Crash listens to the full account of what happened to his fiancée. Inside the tent, Jenica yells at the servant, saying it's already been a week. Desperate, she says that even if Bianca escaped, she couldn't have survived alone. She explains that her sister wouldn't have been able to endure it, as Bianca calls out for Crash. Unconscious in the forest, she whispers how much she wants to find him again. Opening her eyes, Bianca slowly wakes up after being passed out in the snow for a while. Realizing she dozed off again, she sits up, still very weak from the ordeal. She explains that her body is at its limit, surviving on nuts and the fungus. In a flashback, she recalls wandering aimlessly after she fell and found the fungus. Walking through the snow, she comes across a giant tree right in front of her. Holding the fungus, she explains that it radiates heat, and she'll use it to endure. Using what she learned, she took shelter and treated her wounds to survive. Even so, she wonders how much longer she can last in these harsh conditions. Remembering the promise, Burkeman suddenly appears behind her with a threatening look. With a smile, he says he's finally found her whereabouts in this forest. He then declares that the chase is finally over, and this is the end. Hungry, she turns and finds something buried in the snow nearby. Finding some nuts, she apologizes to the squirrels and takes a few to eat. Without her noticing, an axe is thrown with full force in her direction. Barely missing her, the weapon embeds itself in a tree right behind the girl. Looking back, she's startled by the sound, still holding the nuts in her hand. Suddenly, a giant explosion erupts in the distance of the snow-covered forest. The force of the impact throws her violently to the ground, sending her rolling through the snow. Still on the ground, she lifts her face, trying to understand what just happened. Standing in front of her, Burkeman calls her strange for not being scared. He then complains that Valheim's fiancé gave him much more trouble than he expected. Grabbing her by the neck, he warns that she could have survived if she had cooperated. He then rips off her ornament, commenting that it could be worth a lot of money to him. In a memory, she recalls the peaceful days she spent at the Valheim mansion. She remembers the happy moments she shared with the young Crash Valheim. Back in the present, tears start to stream down her face at the memory. As she's being choked, she laments that she will miss those days filled with peace and warmth. At that exact moment, Crash emerges from the shadows to finally rescue his fiancée. With a direct punch, he lands a solid blow on Burkeman, sending the assassin flying. Lying on the ground, the villain angrily asks who the hell the guy who attacked him is. Holding Bianca in his arms, he tells her she did very well. He then tells her to leave the rest of the situation to him. Almost powerless, she can only whisper his name in response. Placing her on the ground, he asks the crow, Krim, to ensure her safety. In another scene, the crow explains it cannot interfere because of the code. Hearing the explanation, he simply nods and says he understands the situation. Then he remembers that Evalesk already teleported him, so it wouldn't be breaking the code. The crow then warns that Burkeman is much stronger than he imagines. Sensing the danger, the crow questions if he's really sure he can win. Despite the warning, he states that it doesn't matter how strong the enemy is. Unleashing his power, he declares with conviction that he will be the winner of this fight. Sensing the energy, Burkeman turns and asks who is interfering with his hunt. With a serious look, he simply orders the villain to return what he took. Confused, the assassin asks what he wants returned. Making the ornament appear, he says, "That belongs to my fiancé, Burkeman." Seeing he was a Valheim, Burkeman charges forward with a ferocious attack. Barely able to keep up, Crash realizes the enemy is a high-class specialist. With his sword pointed, Burkeman says their ransom would be 10 times higher. The two then trade blows, with Burkeman praising the young opponent's defense. The force of the impact throws him backward, sending him sliding far across the snow. At this, Burkeman charges again, asking how long he can keep defending himself. Giving no quarter, he lands a direct blow on Crash's arm, yelling, "Got you!" The powerful attack sends Crash's sword flying, disarming the hero. After disarming him, Burkeman announces that the fun is over, and this is the end. Suddenly, he realizes Crash has disappeared and asks where the boy went. Searching angrily, he shouts that he can still smell him, and demands that he show himself. Coming from behind, Crash appears and prepares a swift and completely unexpected counterattack. With a precise blow, he lands a powerful punch right in the enemy's face. The force of the punch cracks his mask as he screams in pain. Facing his opponent, he realizes he'll need something stronger to win. Activating his new ability, Ignis, he prepares to continue the fight. Seeing his determination, Burkeman questions what kind of opponent he truly is. In response, the villain activates an illusion technique to trap him there. Trapped in the attack, Crash looks confused as Burkeman asks what he thinks. Then Burkeman warns that he's going to test him to see if he can take it. Knowing about the rescue, he declares he'll end everything before help can arrive. Trapped in the illusion, he realizes his 5 senses are now completely distorted. It's revealed that the secret technique uses sound to scramble the opponent's senses. He recalls that his old self would have been helpless, but he's overcome this before. Using his sensory perception, he activates his 6th sense to counter the illusion. Even while resisting, he knows Burkeman is still much stronger than him at that moment. With a plan in mind, he decides to use his enemy's arrogance to his advantage. Burkeman then repeats his threat, saying he'll finish him off before any rescue arrives. Taunting his enemy, Crash says that his threat is actually a lie. Without hesitation, he positions himself to defend against the next incoming blow. Suspicious, Burkeman notices that his movement was not normal for the situation. With a focused expression, he prepares for his adversary's next move. Launching a fire attack, he tries to hit his enemy with a surprise strike. Seeing the attack, Burkeman says he's not common prey like the others. He then warns that he'll approach carefully and threatens his fiancée. Despite the provocation, Crash remains still, showing no reaction to what he heard. Seeing him motionless, Burkeman asks if the illusion is starting to affect him. He then warns that he'll keep pressing until his opponent finally hits the ground. Holding his flaming sword, he prepares for the waves of phantom attacks. Trying to defend himself, he struggles to block the several axes coming his way. Seeing the scene, the little bird despairs, questioning if it's okay to die like this. At this, Evelesque wonders if she should intervene, but she fears his master's revenge. She recalls that his master would hunt them to the ends of the earth for revenge. From the force of the fight, the ground shakes and a blow nearly hits the group, but the crow, Krim, continues to watch the fight from a distance, calm and attentive. Decided, Evelesque declares she can't just abandon the one who saved her like that. As the bird tries to fly, it's stopped by Krim, who tells it not to get involved. He explains that Crash chose to fight alone and bear the consequences. Asking for her trust, Krim tells her to believe in the guy who recovered her heart. Shouting from a distance, the bird says that if he dies, it will take his body back. Kneeling and exhausted, Crash realizes he's finally reaching his absolute limit. He explains that he used his 6th sense to read the attacks, but his power is running out. From that point on, he has to rely solely on his instincts to fight. One of the phantom axes suddenly vanishes into thin air right in front of him. Surprised, he realizes it was just a phantom, and Burkeman appears behind him. Seeing him on the ground, the villain declares that this is the end of the line. Lying down and almost defeated, Crash stares at his enemy with a determined look. In a flashback, he remembers that he always knew his limitations as a fighter. With new determination, he unleashes a hidden power that was stored within him. Burkeman's illusion shatters completely with the boy's release of power. He then reveals that he had been hiding his true strength throughout the entire fight. Unleashing the power of Erosion, he transforms it into strength with his flames. Using this power, he forces his body to break its own limits to fight. With his body bleeding, he reveals he can only use this power for 3 seconds. With his time running out, he charges forward, saying he'll end it all before it's over. Completely shocked by the turnaround, Burkeman can't believe what he's seeing. Impressed, he admits he couldn't even follow the movement with his eyes. Seeing he's about to die, he uses his phantom voice technique to defend himself. With his strike deflected, Crash complains that he was aiming right for his neck. He explains that the sound blurred his vision, causing him to miss the target. The villain then prepares a quick counterattack with his dark energy claws. Shouting, he charges at the hero to try and end the fight for good. Without his power, Crash's 6th sense shows that the claws will hit him, but he grabs the enemy's hand, stopping the attack and surprising the villain. Determined, he refuses to die in this place and prepares his next move. Opening his eyes, he unleashes a new technique with even greater power. Seeing the scene, the birds watch in surprise at what is about to happen. The crow explains that he has reached a state of perfect union with his sword. Inside his mind, he executes the perfect movements for his new attack. With precision, he manages to find the weak point in his opponent's attack. Unleashing his power, a new energy sword forms in his hands. With a final look, he releases all of his power at once. Realizing his defeat, Burkeman wonders if he really just lost this fight. With a devastating blow, Crash pierces through the enemy's body, ending the battle. Waking up suddenly, Bianca desperately screams Crash's name upon seeing him there. Elsewhere, a mysterious figure silently observes the outcome of the fight. Even in victory, he stands there, bleeding and heavily wounded from the combat. Kneeling in the snow, missing an arm, he pays the high cost of victory. After the fight, he stares at Burkeman's body lying on the forest floor. Approaching him, the crow Krim asks if he's satisfied with the outcome. With no strength left, He collapses in the snow, completely exhausted from the great battle. Lying on the ground, he replies that he's far from satisfied. Seeing his condition, the crow decides it's time to head home. Afterward, everyone gathers to take Crash and Bianca back to Blue Pine Hall. She says that if he showed his feelings, the world wouldn't seem so gray. Sitting on the sofa, he just watches her in silence, not knowing what to say. He then asks what is worse, having emotions or having none at all. With a smile, she says he wouldn't feel a thing if she died right now. Irritated, he replies that this is only happening because of their family's decision. In a flashback, the leader of the Hardened Hearts loses his mind and eliminates his entire family. After the tragedy, the Valheim family decides to unilaterally break off the engagement between the two. At their last meeting, he agrees that they will probably never meet again. Using his power, he warns her not to blame him if she ends up wanting to die. Even though she is frightened by the threat, she stares back at him with a serious look. Then his power envelops her, and a creature swallows her completely right there in the room. With his hand outstretched, he manages to absorb the curse from her body into himself. He explains that he has already swallowed so many curses that the current one was cancelled instantly. After absorbing everything, he asks how she is feeling at that moment. Free from the curse, she says the world is cruel while her body transforms. Regaining her lost emotions, she simultaneously became a true monster. Moving to 3 years later, 2 soldiers in Hardened Hearts complain about the long war. Blaming the Imperials, one of them says it all started when the prince deserted. It was revealed that the Poison King drove the Lord mad, causing that entire tragedy. They then comment that the White Demon took his revenge and is now in hiding. Suddenly, an explosion occurs near them, and one of them complains about the mess. Amidst the smoke, Crash emerges, revealing himself to be in command of the supply base. Seeing him, the soldiers identify him as part of the Azure generation and advance with caution. Running through the snow, he complains that he used too many curses and cannot be healed. Having no other choice, he decides he will have to ask Bianca for help. Arriving at the gate, he knocks hard and yells for Bianca to open it immediately. Then, an intense light emerges from the crack in the door as he begins to push. From above, a figure launches a devastating ice attack against the soldiers. By the attack, all the soldiers who were chasing him are hit and defeated for good. Finding the person who helped him, he says it has been a long time since they last saw each other. Wounded and with a sword thrust into her chest, Bianca can only manage to call out for Crash. Completely shocked, he holds her and screams her name, unable to believe what he sees. Seeing the wound, he asks who did that, but she asks him to remember. In a memory, she questions him about what is more difficult, having or not having emotions. She then says that her sister Jenica confessed that she never truly hated her. In tears, the sister said she hated herself for feeling that way about her. At that time, the young Bianca just listened to everything with a very focused and serious look. In another moment, she is seen lying inside a transparent ice coffin. She explains that she felt nothing when the place that tormented her finally collapsed. But when she understood emotions, she was finally able to comprehend her sister's words. With tears in her eyes, she realized that her older sister loved her very much. Then she laments, thinking how everything could have been different if it had been much earlier. Perhaps they could have shared the pain and talked like a real family. And also, in another scenario, things could have been different between the two of them. Dying, she says that perhaps with him, they could have stayed together in the end. With his head bowed, he just listens to her last words in silence. Waking up from a nightmare, he calls out Bianca's name, still very shaken. At that, her hand touches his, which was all bandaged there on the bed. By his side, Bianca tells him that she is right there and that he has finally woken up. He then asks if he is in Hardened Hearts, and she worries about his arm. Giving her a scolding, he asks why she went alone, and she explains the reason. Getting up in bed, he moves with a bit of difficulty and pain. Next, he picks up her hair ornament that was lying nearby. Trying to put it back, she apologizes for him not being able to fasten it properly. With a smile, he thanks her and says that now he can make the elixir he needed. Getting his attention, she prepares to say something very important to him. She then says that she has no emotions and feels nothing even though he is hurt. Placing her hand on her chest, she says she feels frustrated for being this way. In a memory, she wishes she could laugh and also be sad along with him. And she also wanted to be able to feel angry by his side whenever he was. Holding her hand, he says he doesn't want her emotions to be lost. With a slight smile on his face, he looks at her with great seriousness there. Telling him not to worry, she adjusts the bandage on his wrapped hand. Then, with a determined look, she asks him to bring her emotions back. Smiling, He replies that he already intended to do that even without her asking for anything. With her request, a new condition of his power is finally unlocked. It is then revealed that this was always his intention from the beginning. At that, he reaches out his bandaged hand toward her to hold her. With a gentle smile, he extends his hand toward her to embrace her. Pulling her close, he hugs her tightly right there on the bed. Held by him, tears begin to stream down her face without stopping. Holding her in his arms, he says that the world will no longer seem gray. Drying her face with a handkerchief, Bianca finally calms down after having cried. Lying in bed, he asks if she already feels a little better. Seeing her expressionless face, he hears a knock on the bedroom door. On the other side, a voice introduces itself as Jenica and asks for permission to enter. Giving her permission to come in, he sees Jenica stop in surprise at the bedroom door. Worried, Jenica asks about her eye, but Crash wants to know the reason for the visit. At that, she explains that she came to get her for lunch at her brother's request. Hearing the explanation, Crash just observes the situation in silence for a moment. Turning around, Jenica says she will take her leave and leaves him with Bianca. Believing in an apology, he then turns to talk to Bianca. He then warns her that she doesn't need to forgive her sister if she doesn't truly want to. Surprised by his words, Bianca stares at him with a slightly different look. Trying to say something, she suddenly covers her face with both hands. With a gentle touch, he pulls her hands away so he can see her face. Forcing a smile, she tells him that at that moment she is feeling happy. Nodding with a smile, he says he is on his way out and turns around. With his back turned, he calls for Evelesque, asking her to approach for a moment. Giving an order, he tells her to spy on what they are going to say to Bianca. Talking to Krim, he warns that he will destroy everything if they say anything unnecessary. At that, Krim questions if he thinks he can steal his immortality in that state. Telling him not to worry, Crash explains that a saint can heal him. It is then explained that the saints of the Holy Kingdom possess great divine power, but Krim doubts it, saying the Valheims wouldn't pay for a failure like him. Shocked by the answer, Krim asks if he really intends to replace the lost arm. Confirming the suspicion, he says that is exactly why he recruited that person. In another place, Evelesque says it is an easy task, but that he surprised her. Krim then accuses Crash of being a dark regressor, but he denies the intention. Later, Krim asks whose arm he intends to use for the transplant. Upon hearing the name Sword Demon, Krim is completely shocked by the revelation. It is revealed that he was a genius swordsman and his former direct subordinate. Furious, Krim shouts that he was the subordinate he raised with the most affection. Laughing, Crash asks if he doesn't want to make him stronger like he did with the demon. With a serious look, Krim warns that he cares about all of his subordinates. With a smile, Crash says it will be easy to find the enemy's weakness. He explains that their master gets attached to subordinates before realizing it, and with the saints on their side, they can torture them to find the location. Scared by the plan, he remembers a warning that Arthur gave him. Realizing the weakness, he says he can use attachment to manipulate his master. Then he explains that he can bring the sword art back with the transplant. At that, Krim accuses him of being a smooth talker, and Crash asks if that's a no. Here is the translation for the next part of the story, with a line break after each period. With his back turned, Krim just tells him to wait for 2 full days and takes his leave. Thanking him, he says goodbye, but the crow complains about the use of his real name. Looking at his bandaged arm, he says that the arm problem is resolved. He then comments that he now needs to coordinate the stories with both families. Worried about Ariad, he remembers that the butler was exposed because of him. Lying in bed, he says that in the worst-case scenario, he will tell Ariad to ignore everything. Sniffing the air, Evelesque's rat senses that something bad is about to happen. In a family meeting, Bianca refuses the proposal that was made to her there. In a rage, her older brother, Mariokin, tells her to pass the position to Jenica. Rebutting, Jenica says that the failure defeated an expert and will be an asset. Looking at her brother, Bianca says she will not give up her position as the fiancé. With a furious look, he shouts that she is cursed and will soon be discarded. Seeing the fight, Jenica reprimands him, but he says it is only the truth. He then suggests that she take the place, but Jenica cries and questions the family. Without caring about the house, she asks if her father and brother even care. Firmly, Bianca says her feelings will not change and she will stay by his side. Completely shocked by the response, Mariokin slams the table and stands up furiously. Suddenly, a butler enters the room and says he is busy and asks for leave. Interrupting the meeting, Crash says he heard a conversation he could not ignore. Showing 2 fingers, he says there are 2 rumors circulating about him out there. He says the first rumor speaks of how he saved his fiancée, but the second says their security is weak and exposed him to danger. With a smile, He asks which of the two rumors is more convenient for them. Grinding his teeth, Mariokin asks what he really wants with that conversation. Bluntly, he says it is simple, and that they should let Bianca choose. Surprised, the older brother did not expect that response from her so suddenly. Embracing Bianca, he warns that he will not abandon her because of a curse. Seeing the scene, Mariokin agrees to entrust Bianca to his care and leaves. He then suggests a lie about his arm to benefit everyone there. Despite being suspicious, the two siblings agree to follow his plan for now. After Crash leaves, Jenica calls for her brother, wanting to talk to him. With a smile, she says Bianca has changed and suggests accelerating their wedding. Elsewhere, a hand with strange marks touches a mysterious ancient scroll. With its back turned, the mysterious figure calls out Crash's name, observing the situation from afar.